I'll be on the 4 working on a great story
5.
for you guys tonight, too. So stay tuned.
All right.
Next stop, Sherry.
It's some of the best and bright stars who you're going to know very, very soon. They are some of the top recruited baseball players around the country, under 17 years old. And you never know, you might be witnessing the next best thing right here in Chicago. There is a lot of history behind that. And of course, we're going to have representatives from the Chicago White Sox to talk about what you're going to see at the rate tonight. And here's the best part. The event is free, so a lot of entertainment for the whole family, and it's not just baseball. We're going to explain all of it in just a little bit. We're also going to be talking about those beluga whales that got rescued from Canada from the defunct theme park here. They were rescued, and some of them are right here in Chicago at the Shed Aquarium. A lot of you have questions and the backstory behind all of them, and this has just been happening for the last few years where many beluga whales have been rescued and been misplaced or ended up being placed all throughout the world. So we're going to hear about the latest and why this matters for the rest of the world here. But first, this is our top story right now on Fox Chicago. We're talking about Nolan Wells. Teenager ended up dying in Mississippi on a boating trip during 4th of July weekend. It was ruled a death investigation and not a homicide, and that just did not play well with the family. So they ended up hiring famous civil rights attorney Ben Crump to handle the case. And we heard some very interesting things because Ben Crump just happens to be here in Chicago, where they released some of the findings of this independent autopsy here. But they ended up finding that a lot of the stuff was inconclusive. But the big key takeaway here is that they cannot rule out foul play. Ben Crump's words, not mine. But sometimes there are people out there who ended up going against the grain and going for an independent third-party autopsy. And this next man is famous when it comes to that third-party autopsy and getting a different narrative out there because sometimes the facts just don't add up here. So Dr. Michael Baden, who is a famous pathologist, joins us now right here on Chicago Live. Doctor, thank you so much for being here today.
Good to be here with you, Brett.
What was your big key takeaway when you heard Ben Crump talking today about the autopsy for Nolan Wells?
Well, not only was he talking about it, but they did release the second autopsy, which your assistant sent to me. And that has a lot of information that's helpful. But the most important information as to whether there's foul play or not is not present in the second autopsy. For example, what kind of clothes was Mr. Wells wearing? Was he wearing a bathing suit or not? And that has to come from the police, not from the second autopsy. The first autopsy would have described the clothing. Toxicology has to be completed, which should be completed pretty soon. The condition of the lungs is not adequate in a second autopsy to determine if drowning has occurred or not, because the dissection of the lungs diffuses away any water that might be present. That would be present in the first autopsy, which has not been released. And whether or not the second autopsy does indicate that there's no evidence of any kinds of injuries to the internal organs or to the external of the body, except for a odd bruise, discoloration, the back of the head, the back of the head. And the problem is with a second autopsy that the first autopsy does damage that has to be considered. And the toxicology hasn't been done and has to be further examined. The second autopsy makes further incisions. These incisions in the second autopsy revealed some kind of discoloration, whether it's due to blood, whether it's due to trauma before death or after death, because a body in water gets can hit rocks and wooden logs and things in the water can strike bodies, so that there are a lot of secondary injuries that can occur after death that have to be distinguished from what happened before. I guess there's agreement that he was found in the water, and what his condition was before that.
Especially because we heard from his family saying that Nolan Wells was an excellent swimmer, and if he did indeed drown, what were the circumstances behind it? But the fact that they were missing the throat, they got to look at the stomach to see how much water may have gotten his system. Was he being physically held under, or was there some other circumstances here? The other thing that really jumped out at me of what kind of sparked this whole thing is that when his family ended up getting his cell phone, they said that it appeared that some of his messages were erased. When a family says that to you in a situation like this, what immediately comes to mind, Doctor?
Well, the family has to be taken into full account and what they say, but that's more of a police investigation, and that as to whether anything was removed that shouldn't have been removed. But also there may be security cameras around and other people's cell phones that the police have, and there will be a lot more information gathered from them, and even the telephone calls, etc., so that the autopsy doesn't give you the whole picture in any drowning death, because any drowning death could be accident, suicide, or homicide, if this is a drowning death. And the circumstances around how the person got in the water and what happened before he went in the water becomes very important, and that's gathered mostly by the police and in interrogation, speaking to any kind of witnesses who may be there. And the police have a lot of that. There's a lot of that. The fact that there's no neck organ, one of the things that the first autopsy considered the possibility of strangulation, and that's why they have kept the windpipe, the Adam's apple that we can press, which is the thyroid cartilage, in neck compression, strangulation, for example. There may be fractures there, so it's not uncommon for the first autopsy personnel to be able to keep that and to do further dissection. There's no evidence that there's any brain damage, but if there was blood around the brain, that wouldn't be present for a second autopsy. So the police and the medical examiner know a lot more than has been released, but the second autopsy certainly did bring a lot of information for the public to and the family to consider.
Especially that when you hear it was originally death investigation, and you heard Ben Crum say, we can't rule out foul play. And then in that second autopsy they were just mentioned in here, they're not ruling out that there might have been some kind of strangulation. Of course, there's still that a lot has to be talked about here. When somebody hires somebody like you and looking at this from what was ruled originally, and now there's a lot of questions here, do you think that authorities in Mississippi may have did anything wrong here, or may have had a misstep in drawing a conclusion too soon?
Well, they haven't drawn a conclusion, so I don't see any evidence that there has been a misstep. However, we'll know more later. But Brett, to make it clear, the autopsy gives a certain amount of information, and as I said, there are certain things that we can't make a diagnosis by autopsy alone, such as a drowning, a fire death, a fall from a height death, because accident, suicide, and homicide have to be considered and ruled out or ruled in. And this is one of those deaths that we don't have any information as whether or not there was water in the lungs. If he inhaled water, that means he was alive when he went into the water. If he didn't inhale water, then there's more of a concern that was he dead before he was put in the water. So the first medical examiner who did the autopsy knows that, the police know that, but that can't be derived from the second autopsy.
And it was very surprising for some of the people who were sitting in that press conference when they talked about how there were certain organs in Nolan Wells' body that were missing. And some are drawing a conclusion saying like, oh, that was removed for nefarious reasons. But this thing sort of happens all the time. Were you also watching this yourself saying, yeah, that's pretty common, even if I'm being brought in to do a third-party autopsy?
Yeah, I was watching, and what I considered was they were doing a pretty detailed and correct autopsy in the first autopsy, because they kept the one object that would permit them to further investigate whether there was strangulation, which is one of the important considerations when there's no external evidence of injury or foul play. The internal evidence of injury happens in strangulation cases because the injuries are underneath the skin. And the first autopsy is done whenever the body is found and gives you some information how long the body has been dead, as do the stomach contents, tells you how long the food has been in the stomach. But the second autopsy is a week later, and there has been some decomposition, and that can also cause skin discoloration. So the area of discoloration in the back of the head may or may not have happened before death, and that microscopic examination and would clarify whether it was before or after death.
You brought up another good point, and then they talked about this today during the press conference, was the fact that because the body was badly decomposed, they couldn't find any significant bruising. And time seems to be a factor anytime you're trying to make a scientific determination on how somebody died here. How much time goes by where if the body is badly decomposing like that the bruising goes away? Is it a matter of a few days or is it a few weeks?
It entirely depends on how hot the surrounding environment is, how hot the water is, how hot the air, because in very hot weather, a body in an apartment that's not air conditioned can go to severe decomposition within 2 or 3 days, and that causes discoloration of the outer skin. Usually the bruising of any significance will go deeper into muscle and all. That would still be available, and that's what the second autopsy doctors looked at, and they found the hemorrhage deep in the soft tissues on the back of the head. Now, whether that was there before death, after death, or whether the autopsy itself or decomposition caused that discoloration is best determined from what the first autopsy showed and photographed. Remember, part of the obligation of the person doing the autopsies is document any injuries that are present, that can be made available to review by other forensic pathologists. And that would have been done on the first autopsy, but apparently hasn't been released yet to the second, the people who did the second autopsy.
I guess we'll wait and see on the results of that. And while I have you here, because you were talking about the potential of strangulation in the Nolan Wells case, you have been very famous talking about potential strangulation when it comes to the death of Jeffrey Epstein. You were hired by Jeffrey Epstein's brother to find out how his brother died because the official cause of death was suicide. You were brought in, and your findings went against what the official cause of death was. And because you were talking about potential strangulation in this case, I wanted you to kind of enlighten our viewers right now about how you ended up coming to the determination that Jeffrey Epstein's death was not a suicide and it was indeed a homicide.
No, that's not my full opinion. My opinion is, and I didn't see a second, I wasn't there at a later time. I was there at the first autopsy of Jeffrey Epstein, and the findings at the first autopsy, with me next to the doctor, the medical examiner from New York City who did the autopsy, was that there was hemorrhages and fractures in the windpipe at the thyroid cartilage, which are common not in strangulation, in manual strangulation, in stepping on the neck in some situations, and not at all common in suicidal hanging. And that's why the medical examiner who did the autopsy, same thing here, issued the first death certificate as pending further study, undetermined, just as is issued in well, waiting for more information as to how was the body found, and the correction officers initially who were caring for Jeffrey Epstein wouldn't tell. They took them 2 years to tell how the body was found, whether hanging, whether on the ground, etc. So my opinion on that is that from the autopsy alone is more likely
Okay, look.
Mr. Wells, a lot depends on what the other circumstances and findings are that are beyond the autopsy table.
Oh, the other thing too, and I believe you mentioned this before in an interview about how there's a consistency if somebody indeed ends up hanging themselves, you will find blood rushing from one area or even bruising around the area. And you found something that was a bit unusual in Jeffrey Epstein's death.
Well, what found is that the ligature was horizontal, which is more common in ligature strangulation, like when the bad guy in The Godfathers, when somebody's strangled who's in the passenger seat by the person behind him there's a horizontal mark, whereas in hanging it usually goes up on either side, and here it was more horizontal. Now that suggests, but doesn't conclude, that it could have been a homicide. So the autopsy findings more common in Jeffrey Epstein of what we find in homicidal strangling, but the other information, such as how the body was found, which wasn't known for a couple of years, till the two guards were almost to avoid going into federal prison. It leaves a lot of unanswered questions there.
You have such an illustrious career, and you've covered so many high-profile cases. Of course, we were talking about Nolan Wells' case right now because there's so many unanswered questions. I just asked you about Jeffrey Epstein. What cases do you talk about the most, or the ones that you find fascinating with the decades upon decades that you've been doing this?
Well, going back to my youth in New York City, the most impressive is how the autopsies were done on President John F. Kennedy. I was asked to be the lead forensic pathologist in the Select Committee on Assassinations congressional review of his death. And what was so impressive was how poorly the initial autopsies were done, and how many, and this is still a presence in this country. There's so many autopsies that are not quite done, so many death investigations. But we only talk about the high-profile ones that come the media brings to attention. But remember, they're only less than 5% of autopsies are high-profile. The great bulk of what we do, 98% of what medical examiners do, are known only to the family and loved ones. And there's a real problem in this country of doing proper post-mortem investigations on everybody, not just on high-profile people. And the ones that are low-profile often don't get further investigations to find that there's been a mistake.
And when that happens, is it usually because they've tainted the scene, the crime scene, or have they done something with the body that ends up messing up the entire investigation and trying to find a conclusion of how this person may have died?
As you say, we learn a lot from the autopsy as to how a person dies, especially from natural conditions. When people die of heart disease or cancer or Alzheimer's disease, an autopsy is done. Usually the causes of death are very well established. It's when the people die outside of a hospital, outside where there's less known about the circumstances, that we're concerned about errors in the autopsy procedure, and part of that is 93% of people die of natural diseases. The great majority of pathologists, our hospital pathologists who are super at natural diseases, only about 400 or 500 forensic pathologists exist in the United States. So most autopsies are done by people who are not trained in gunshot wounds. They're trained in cancer, but not in forensic problems. That's what happened with President Kennedy. President Kennedy was initially autopsied by doctors who were excellent in natural diseases, but who had never done autopsies in gunshot wounds, and a whole lot of mistakes were made by directions of the bullet wound, which is an exit, which is an entrance, that live with us today as people still believing that there was some kind of conspiracy with President Kennedy's death. So that I think we need to have more trained forensic pathologists around the country to make sure that the autopsies themselves are done properly, interpreted properly, and can coordinate with whatever external findings there are, having to do with was he pushed out of the window? Did he fall while window watching? Or was he thrown out the window? The autopsy findings would be the same in all three, and we would have to rely on a good scene investigation to be able to distinguish among the three possibilities.
Because there was so much, I remember the history books have said with President Kennedy when he was campaigning for re-election in Texas, he had told his wife, we're going into hostile territory, everything happened, and when you were saying that there was an improper autopsy done in President Kennedy's death, it also opened up, and we're still talking about this today, is,
yes,
was there a second shooter? And that was one of the big questions that you were kind of asked, I believe, saying, was there a possibility of a second shooter?
Right.
You still say otherwise, it was only Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, that you bring up a very good point, because we had a 9-member forensic pathology unit, a subcommittee for the review, and the forensic pathologists all agreed that there was only one shooter, that the 2 bullets that struck the president came from Lee Harvey Oswald's weapon. Because of additional acoustic evidence that our unit did not believe was very reliable, the acoustic evidence experts said that there were 2 shots fired from different weapons. And because of that, the committee did say there were 2 shooters, even though the forensic pathologist said 1. So he was shot. Lee Harvey Oswald, 3 shots, 2 struck him from behind, and no other bullets struck him. But the conclusion of the committee as a whole had initially said there were 2 shooters, and that leads to further confusion to this day.
Yeah, confusion, and there's still books being written about what happened, and there's additional theories about what may have happened
Yes.
to President Kennedy and who may have had a hand in this during this whole thing here. Going back to the Nolan Wells case, I was wondering where we would go from here, because sometimes these toxicology reports can take quite some time. And if you were hired by the family of Nolan Wells, what would be the next step in this investigation?
Well, the next step would be to find out what the result of the toxicology is. And that can only be done on the blood specimens removed at the time of the first autopsy. Now, as 95% of the toxicology is already done, it's only that there are certain new drugs, especially synthetic drugs like marijuana and all coming from China, that require a few weeks of work, whereas that has little. That doesn't cause death. They rarely cause death. But it would be very important to know what his mental status was at the time he went into the water. Assuming he went into the water alive, did he jump in? Where did he enter the water? The police know a lot of this, and they'll provide that to the family immediately. What the police know, they should be advising the family and Mr. Crump and other lawyers about. So that is coming out. But I think that given the circumstances, there should be a resolution of this matter that should be rather agreeable by all sides as to whether this was accident, suicide, homicide. There's no evidence of suicide, so I'll take that off the table. But whether there's foul play or not, that should be able to be addressed fully once the first autopsy information is released, the toxicology and the police investigation and questioning of witnesses. So that could be completed pretty quickly.
Dr. Michael Boughton, you've given us a lot to think about, and we really appreciate your insight, not only on the Nolan Wells case, but so many other cases that you've worked on over the years. You are always welcome right here on Chicago Live, sir.
Thank you, Brett.
It's my pleasure. All right,
Bye-bye.
It is 1:27 right now, and we're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back here on Chicago Live. Welcome back, everybody, on Chicago Live. It's just about 1:30 here. And, you know, we're located in the Loop, and sometimes we hear a lot of loud noises with traffic going by, loud music, all sorts of things. maybe even an Air Force going by the loop at this hour on a Wednesday. Perhaps you heard it was the Britain famous Royal Air Force acrobatic team that happens to be right here in Chicago doing a flyby of the Chicago Loop. This happened right around 12:30. And to talk about why the Royal Air Force aerobatic team is in town, we got Dustin Wales joining us right here on Chicago Live. Dustin, you're in your Reds. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
It's my pleasure, Dustin. What brings you to Chicago, and what has been this experience like here with the Royal Air Force aerobatic team?
Well, first off, it is lovely to be here. We've had a wonderful time in America. We started our journey just about a month ago. We arrived and we're doing some air displays down on the South Coast. We were part of the 4th of July fly past up the river in New York, which is probably one of the more special things that I'll take away with me forever. And we were the ones that were putting painting the flag in smoke up the river. And then today, as part of our journey on our way to the Oshkosh Air Festival this weekend, we're stopping by effectively for fuel here. And we had the opportunity to put another flag up and another fly past over the wonderful skyline of Chicago.
That is such a great air show in Oshkosh, because you got people from all over the country who come to that air show, and even people from all over the world like yourselves here. For everyone who missed the flyby, the flyover around the loop, how would you describe what your team ended up flying around Chicago did?
So we approached from the water. We entered a large bank turn. There's 7 aircraft that were flying today. And then effectively put out some smoke out the back of the airplane, which would have started out white. It then would have gone into stripes of red and white, and then finally a little blue square at the end to hopefully draw an American flag. We then dipped back round and did the same thing again with just some red, white, and blue stripes individually before departing and landing at Gary International.
And you guys, the Red Arrows, you guys have been performing around the world since 1965. You are known for your close formations right here, but there's also just with British history, the Royal Air Force has been some of the best. It was widely considered the best Air Force in the world right there. And you were here because it's the 250th anniversary of America that we've been celebrating all summer long here. I love hearing about the history and just the pride of Great Britain, the Royal Air Force, and how you ended up getting into this.
Yeah, well, we're incredibly lucky to be able to come and celebrate this momentous occasion with you all. Our longest standing, closest ally, right back into the World War II times and beyond, and everything since. So it's a real privilege for us to be part of it. It's a real privilege for us to be here, and we have had a lot of fun doing this. It's been something really special for everybody involved to be part of.
Especially because we are just, I believe, a few weeks away from the Air and Water Show right here in Chicago. So many people from around the world end up coming to the shores of Lake Michigan to see some of the best flyers around the world right here. You guys have this show coming up this weekend in Oshkosh, and I've been to it. In fact, you'll see some hot air balloons. You'll see some World War II aircraft you're going to see, and even some of the latest technology when it comes to flying right here. You guys have shows, I believe, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. How do people go about seeing you?
Yep, that's absolutely right. We'll be performing all weekend along with all of those other impressive acts that you've already mentioned. And yes, for some of us, this is probably the biggest show that we will ever, be a part of. It's something that a lot of us are personally looking forward to being involved in, for sure. As far as coming to see us, the best place to see it is just straight from the middle of the crowd. Everything that we do is aimed at, providing a show for the crowd to see at the crowd line. So getting yourself as close to the front as you can would be a really good way to see the show. You can expect to see, a show where we will do the first half of the show will be all together, all 7 jets flying, close formation, tight maneuvers, all together, looping and rolling if we have the weather for it. And then into the second half of the show, the tempo steps up a little bit. We split into two different sections. You'll see some of the head-to-head passes that we're known for, high crossing speeds, and other loops and rolls as well. It's certainly dynamic. There's something for everybody. It's definitely one not to miss.
I mean, you guys are some of the most elite pilots in the entire world. When they think about the Red Arrows, that's obviously elite from Great Britain, but also you hear here in America, you hear about the Blue Angels, you even hear about the Thunderbirds. For the someone who doesn't know anything about flying, would you guys ever team up with a group like the Blue Angels?
So what we do is ultimately very similar. We're formation display teams. When you boil it down, we're doing the same thing. Formation aerobatics, close aircraft, close together, smoke coming out the back. There are some differences between the way we do things. The shows are subtly different. The Thunderbirds and Blue Angels, they've got a modern front line, large aircraft, lots of noise, lots of afterburner. Our aircraft are a little bit older. They're training aircraft from yesteryear. They're on their way out of service soon. But what we aim to put on is something a little bit different, something a little bit complementary to their shows. So the shows are different. But that's not to say that any one is better than the other. In terms of working together, we've been lucky to do a little bit of flying with the Blue Angels, or at shows where the Blue Angels have been already. And we did get to put one joint sortie together earlier at the State of Maine Air Show. Unfortunately, I don't think the opportunity will be around again. I don't think we're going to be seeing them again before we head back home at the end of the month.
No, you get. There's always that competition, but it's a friendly competition of who is the superior pilots there. Was this your first time flying in Chicago? And if it was, or whether it was or not, what was your impression of flying through the loop and seeing the tall buildings right alongside the lake?
So it is my first time being here for sure. I think the only person on our team at the moment who was here in 2019 and actually flew the show over Chicago was our leader, Red One, who's Wing Commander Bond. But yeah, for me, it was the first time actually being in Chicago at all. Like you say, initially on the run in to the fly past, I could just kind of peek out the corner of my eye and see all the cityscape, the skyline waiting for us. Unfortunately, with all of these things, for us on the wing of these fly pasts, we actually are so focused on just making sure that our positioning is correct, that we're correctly following the commands and the instructions of the lead, getting the smoke colors right, that actually the ability to look beyond what we're doing straight away and enjoy some of the sights is a little bit harder to achieve. So for the most part, I got a little peek out the corner of my eye before we began, and then after that it was down to business to make sure that we put in a good show.
I can understand that. You want to go and go with the task at hand without doing any kind of sightseeing, because one little mistake can end up being a catastrophe right here. And I like that, but it's sometimes you almost wonder, hey, can I fly up again just to kind of do a fly over the city where I don't have a task at hand? I could just go and enjoy myself. And Dustin, I was wondering what inspired you to fly, because there's so many things that inspire people here in the United States if they want to become a pilot. Sometimes pop culture can play a role in that, whether they see the Top Gun movies or they see any of these military movies. What was the one thing or the two things that inspired you to fly, Dustin?
I think for me, as I was growing up, like many people, it was actually going and watching air shows like we get to reciprocate now and put on a good show for everybody. I think that inspiration is something that's really it's really nice to be able to give back again now that I've managed to get into this role. Certainly when I was younger, I grew up around aircraft. Every time there was a noise overhead, I would just, eyes to the sky to see what it was. So it's always been something I've been incredibly interested in. And at the same time, I think that combined with going to see things, air shows, air displays by aircraft, whatever it might be, is definitely something that pushed me into pursuing that career. And like I say, it's a real privilege to be able to give that back now and hopefully inspire the next generation in wherever, America or the UK, wherever we happen to be.
And you have to be in such incredible shape to do what you're doing. You're one of the elite pilots in the world. How fast, for people watching this right now, they think, oh, that'd be cool to do. I could fly that. I'd like to hear your answer about how good of shape you have to be in, how fast you go, and what kind of lung capacity that you have to have in order to do what you do.
Yeah, there is definitely a physical element to this job in general. Certainly, the forces that you get put under, the G forces on your body, predominantly pushing you straight down into the seat. It can get up to towards 7 for us, potentially higher in other frontline aircraft. But for us, about 7G is probably the most we will see. In terms of speed, the aircraft's capable of going supersonic. We would have to be quite high up to do that. So for the show, actually, for the majority of the time, we're down around about 350 to 400 miles an hour as we put on the show, which gives a nice blend of a little bit of speed, a little bit of excitement, but also enough time to actually see what we're doing and actually have a chance to take it all in. When we get into that second half that I talked about, the speed pushes up a little bit and you'll get closing speeds of over 700, 800 miles an hour, which can be, that certainly focuses the mind for sure. And as with everything, it's important that we do stay in shape. Lung capacity, I don't know if I've ever had that measured exactly, but it's definitely one to keep yourself in top shape so that when you're experiencing those forces, when you're working that hard, that you've got the fitness to carry on.
That your VO2 max is important. And if you've ever had anybody fly with you who's not a pilot and they end up passing out or getting sick because of the maneuvers that you're making, even the speed, because we've seen that happen, whether people are flying with the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds and they think, oh, this is cool, and then they end up just passing out briefly because there's so much pressure on their body.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we try not to make people pass out if we can help it at all, because we want, if they do get the opportunity to be lucky enough to fly with us, which does happen from time to time, we want them to enjoy it. We want them to take a pleasurable experience away from it. If they're in the show, if they're lucky enough to get that and be part of the actual show, then unfortunately it is a little bit of a case of, well, the show is the show. We fly it the way we fly it, so you're either going to be okay or you're not. And I have seen people in the back seat of other aircraft in the show kind of reaching for their sick bag and stuff, which you do feel a bit sorry for them. They will, ultimately, if someone's not well, we will stop and get them back down. But it's always quite nice when you take somebody, especially if they're, a colleague or someone who works elsewhere within the military, and you take them flying and they come down. They do tend to come down and go, I just thought that you guys kind of went up and had a bit of fun and it was all easy and it was no problem. And they come down looking a bit tired and they kind of sleep really well that night. It's quite nice to point out that it's not as easy as it looks.
Of course, they think they know, but then they don't know until they're actually up there and say, yeah, we've been training our whole lives for this. There's a reason why we're in the driver's seat and you're just going to be on the ground the entire time here. Dustin, after Oshkosh, what is next for the Red Arrows?
So once we've finished at Oshkosh, then our recovery back to the UK begins. So we'll make our way from Oshkosh out towards into Canada. So an airport called North Bay, then Bagotville, and then onwards towards North Canada through Iqaluit into Greenland. Kangerlussuaq is the airfield there, then into Iceland, and then onwards through to the northern tip of Scotland, and then back down to our home base in Lincolnshire. So that will take us between 4 and 5 days, as long as the weather's on our side. We're at the maximum endurance range of the airplane to do that, so we really need the winds to be at least behind us, if not headwind.
Yeah, because we were asking how long it would take you to get home, but you still, you're stopping in Chicago to refuel before you go to Oshkosh here. You were already saying during your show you're going about 350, 400 miles an hour, but you guys can get to supersonic speeds there. So this is, in an ideal world, it probably couldn't take you that long to get home.
Well, I guess if you had unlimited fuel, we could do it quite a bit more quickly. Unfortunately for us, our aircraft can't refuel mid-air like a lot of military aircraft can these days. So we do have to stop and take on fuel wherever we go. And certainly the high speeds are great when you can get them, but they're very fuel inefficient. So when we're talking about really kind of stretching the legs as far as they'll go, then disappointingly, the speed is quite slow to make that happen. So the flights will be, for the longest legs, upwards towards 2 hours before we then get to the next destination and refuel again. So we do about 2 flights a day as we go back over the ocean. And at least one of those will probably be about up to 2 hours to just try and make sure that we can get to the airfields we need to get to on time.
Well, I think so many people are going to be asking you questions at the show in Oshkosh. Dustin Wales from the Royal Air Force Aerobatic Team, thank you so much for being right here on Chicago Live and giving us insight into what you do. Well, you're one of the elite.
Thank you very much for having me. It was lovely to talk to you.
Oh, you're so kind, Dustin. Thank you so much. You're welcome here anytime.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Oh, you too. All right, the time is now 1:45. We'll be right back right here on Chicago Live. .147 is your time, and we are fortunate here in Chicago to see some of the best baseball players in the world. We have two baseball teams, but first, we got to talk about the Chicago White Sox. They are red hot right now. Of course, they are on the road right now, but there's still baseball that's going to be played on the south side in just a few hours at Rate Field. Think of them as the next generation of what you may see end up joining the big leagues one day. To talk more about what you're going to see today at Rate Field, we got Troy Williams, the director of Ace and Community Baseball with the Chicago White Sox. Troy, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So this is the annual Double Duty Classic. This is a premier showcasing, highlighting some of the most talented high school baseball players around, but it's also celebrating the legacy and the impact of the Negro Leagues. And how big of an impact is this going to play, kind of bringing together some of the up-and-coming baseball players right now, but also celebrating and remembering some of the players who came before them?
Yeah, this game is huge for us. This event every year, we have a good crowd come out. And the biggest thing is the young athletes get a chance to perform on a major league field, something they may not ever get a chance to do. So, for us, it's about paying homage to the Negro Leagues and the sacrifices that the men and women, had to endure for us to play this great game of baseball that we all love. So, very family friendly event. We're gonna have a good time. It's gonna be a lot of energy in the building tonight.
And I believe the event is free, and it's not just baseball that we're talking about. There's going to be other events happening at Rate Field today.
Yeah, our pregame festivities start at 4:00 in Lot B. Jesse White tumblers. We'll have a DJ out there. We'll have, people just enjoying and fellowshipping around each other as we prepare to see some good baseball tonight. We got some pretty good players on the rosters tonight, and we're looking forward to, seeing them showcase their talents.
Yeah, we look at the DCC bring in elite 17 and under high school baseball players. And this is not just here in Illinois. You're talking baseball players from across the country here. And this is also going to be one of those opportunities where some of the recruiters, the scouts out there are going to be looking after some of these young men and saying, hey, maybe they're the future of our ball club.
Yeah, we got some of the best minority talent from across the country, and the biggest thing is last night we had a pre-dinner, and we had a chance to put the college coaches on a panel so they can talk about all the different things that these young people will go through as they matriculate into college, talking about NIL, talking about their recruitment process, and they'll all be here tonight, ready to give out some scholarship money. So that's the goal for these young guys to go out, showcase their talent. They got one opportunity tonight to impress somebody, and hopefully they walk away, with some good conversations and with the hope that they can be on somebody's college campus in the fall.
And I like that they're getting an opportunity to showcase how good they could be on a big stage. In other words, they're going to be playing on a professional baseball diamond here. Do you find that a lot of these young men who they're obviously great baseball players, they can play at the next level, whether that be college, maybe the minors, or maybe one day the majors, do sometimes they get overlooked, or sometimes the way the travel baseball leagues are, the way the rankings are, the recruitment doesn't quite do them justice, and they sometimes get overlooked?
Absolutely. I mean, that is the reason that the ACE program was created in 2007. Colleges and universities were not coming into the city recruiting minority talent. Myself being an example of that. So you get a young athlete, you build them up, you develop them, and you put them on a platform to go out and impress somebody. It gives them an opportunity and a chance, and that's really all some of our kids need is an opportunity. So to see our kids to go out. We're approaching 20 years in this, with the ACE program, and to see the way we've been able to retain and continue to push kids to school, that's just a blessing. And I think that is full credit to the White Sox Charities investment, full support from Jerry Reinsdorf and the organization.
And it's amazing when it could be a frustrating time for some of these kids because they know deep down in their heart they're good. You see when you look at them, you look at their tape, you look at them on the field and say, this guy has got all the tools to be a big-time ball player, but sometimes they're not ranked where they are, or they sometimes are a little upset of why they're not ranked, or they're not getting the attention of all these scouts here. But just because they're not getting the attention now doesn't mean that the history book is written for them. And sometimes you'll see a diamond in the rough, and then you see them make the big leagues, and you go, where's this guy been the whole time? And I'm sure you have so many stories like that, and you even gave a little personal touch of your own story.
Yeah, it's weird, man. We go all around the country to play baseball, and there's some places that we walk up, and you walk up and there's 14 black kids, ready to play a game, and people are looking at us like we're in a museum. It's like we've been around for 20 years. We can play this game, and all our young people need is an opportunity and a platform to really showcase that they can play and they can compete with the rest of the country. So, we're just going to continue to do our part. The double duty is just one aspect of it. Tonight's going to be electric. You're going to see some of the best players in the country showcasing their talents, and the best part is their families in the stands smiling, happy, just to see them playing on a major league field.
Have you seen some guys come out there and they might have been a little nervous, and then they go out there and they perform at a level that they've never performed at before? And it's usually that kind of separates the good players from the elite players of when the pressure is on. Can you perform? Because there's so many great ball players out there, but when the lights are on, when it all matters, it's some of those people who just put themselves at that elite level that shows them that, yes, they are elite and they can play at the next level. Have you seen some of those examples when you've been doing this?
Yeah, the funny part is when kids go out and they touch the dirt, everybody's nervous, and then you realize, oh, this is just baseball. So once the nerves settle and you kind of realize you're just playing the game that you've been playing your whole life, and you're prepared for this moment, and you are, just well prepared for the moment. Once the dust settles, it's just a game. We're just playing a kid's game. So, you'll see tonight. You'll see. I remember seeing a kid last year step on the mound. He throws 4 straight balls. We go out there, we talk to him, calm him down, settle the nerves, and now he's locked in. Now you realize he's just playing baseball. The same thing he does every other weekend. It's just on a bigger field. So I'm excited for these young people. I hope they embrace this moment. It's a big moment in their sports career, and who knows, maybe we'll see some of them playing on the big stage one day.
You've already had some guys, 51 former DDC participants have been selected in the draft since the event's inception, including this last year in 2025. You had Shea Robinson, Eddie King Jr. So the thing is, you go to this event, anybody who's on the fence about maybe going today, you might see a person who's going to get drafted in the next MLB draft.
Absolutely. There's a kid playing tonight, Blake Ragsdale, very good ball player. His brother played in this game years ago. He's committed to go to TCU next fall, and he's a potential guy that could be in the draft next year. Jazarius McMore Jr., who goes to Marion Catholic, can hit the ball out of the ballpark, at any moment. So there's some guys here that are going to be showcasing their talents tonight that they may one day be a big leaguer. But they have very good chances to be drafted professionally in the next year.
We were talking about the scouts and everybody looking at them to scout the next group of talent there. Do you know anyone specifically or any universities or even major league clubs where the scouts have committed that they're going to be at the rate tonight?
I do know, obviously, the home team will be here. Our guys from the Sox, the Cubs. I know a Cub Scout is confirmed to be here tonight. Schools wise, we have Prairie View A&M, Miles College. We have a couple local schools coming in, UIC, Illinois State. We have some smaller schools that are from the South, Stillman College, Davenport University from Michigan. So we've got a diverse group of a diverse bunch coming in. We want to make sure that we're keeping all the options open for these kids, and no matter what level they can play on.
And I think it's quite inspiring when you have the White Sox that have been struggling for the last few years, and you look at how they're playing right now. They're playing great baseball right now. They're right in it. It's meaningful. It looks promising. And this is just such a turnaround with the amount of young players, the guys who have been drafted and acquired through free agency here. And for these young guys, because they're playing at the rate, this could potentially inspire them to say, hey, this could be you in a few years. You could be that next guy who could be playing for the Chicago White Sox, and we may call your number and we'll bring you up to the active roster one day.
Man, this team has been fun to watch. As a White Sox fan, my entire life, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. So seeing this group, my favorite guy, man, Miguel Vargas, is my guy. He's really he's a supporter of the ACE program. Davis Martin, Costa Montgomery, all those dudes. Every time they see our kids at the ballpark, they speak to them, they talk to them, they embrace them. So I'm just I'm grateful and humbled to be a part of this organization, and we got World Series aspirations. So we'll see what happens.
I think what makes it so cool, too, is that everybody looks like they're having fun. And to your point, Troy, is that if you're nice and loose and you're just having fun, the rest will just take care of itself. All those drills that they've been doing for years and years and years, that's like second nature. If they go out there and they're having fun, sometimes that's all they need. And you go, man, I want to be a part of that. That's why they're winning. And sometimes you have to wonder, could that be the ingredient for why this White Sox team is that good? And sometimes there's just randomness in baseball.
Yeah, we had Bo Porter here from the commissioner's office last night, and Bo talked a lot to the kids about just really enjoying the process, right? Not being so obsessed with the result, but just really being obsessed with the process of preparing to play the game, because if you're prepared to play the game, the rest, once you get out there, you just got to be loose and play, and good things will happen. This game is hard. You fail a lot, so you have to be able to really be obsessed with this game and understand that if you fail, you just got to, flush it, get to the next at bat, get to the next pitch.
And how has the recruiting process or the scouting process really changed ever since so much of the public is now familiar with sabermetrics? Before, you had scouts just looking at somebody's raw talent on the field, but they didn't really go into their stats. They looked at their on-base percentage. They looked at how much, what's their slugging percentage. How much of that has played and sort of evolved or changed the evaluation of a young player?
You know what? Metrics matter. I think there's a place for the eye test, and there's a place for the metrics. And I think the biggest thing that we've preached to our kids is you got to pass the eye test at least, right? You got to be out there and be able to have some measurable that they want to see. But at the end of the day, the reason I love this game is you still got to play it. It's not like football, it's not like basketball where the most athletic kids are the best players. That's just not the reality of our game. So you have to put the work in to have those measurables where they can go and say you stack up this way against this next player. But when they come out and see you play, you still got to play. You still got to be able to hit the baseball. You still got to be able to run fast. You got to be able to throw hard. So those are things that we preach to our kids, and we want to make sure that they're prepared to also push those measurables out. But you got to be able to play the game when the lights come on.
How can you not be romantic about baseball? Troy Williams, Director of ACE and Community Baseball for the Chicago White Sox, talking about a great event today. I hope you can join them. It's going to be first pitch at 6 o'clock. Of course, the festivities start at 4 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us today right here on Chicago Live.
Thank you so much. Go Sox.
Go Sox indeed. All right, just about 2 o'clock. We'll be right back right here on Chicago Live. Welcome back. It's 2:02. You're watching Chicago Live. We've got both the House and Senate in session right now in Washington, D.C. And as we are talking right now, there are members of the House who are debating the Stop Insider Trading Act. Let's listen in.
The House floor. A lot of hard work on both sides of the aisle. But to my colleagues back in Iowa, watch this vote. Watch who talks about ending stock trading and who delivers on ending stock trading. Watch who's committed beyond the rhetoric to holding Washington accountable. Together, we're working to clean up Congress. We're working to secure our elections. These are two easy votes on the floor today. I urge my colleagues to vote yes. And Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman from Iowa yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
I inquire how much time I have remaining.
12 and a half minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman, my colleague and friend from New York, Mr. Lawler.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of H.R. 7008, the Stop Insider Trading Act, to end stock trading by members of Congress, because trust in our democracy cannot be a luxury item. It must be the everyday expectation of every American. For too long, the public has watched the headlines that read like a civics lesson gone wrong. Elected officials buying and selling stocks in industries they regulate, profiting from information the public will never see. That is not merely unseemly, it is corrosive. It eats away at confidence in this institution, and confidence once lost is not easily rebuilt. Banning congressional stock trading is a simple proposition. If you serve the public, you serve only the public. You don't get to play the market with one hand while writing the rules with the other. You don't get to benefit from the power the people have loaned you. This reform is about fairness. For the teacher saving for retirement, the nurse investing in her future, the small business owner trying to build something that lasts. They play by the rules. They deserve a Congress that does the same. Mr. Speaker, this is our chance to say clearly, public service is a public trust. let us honor it. The fact is, this bill bans stock trading, and yes, it requires photo ID, something 80% of Americans agree with. And after we just saw what came out yesterday by one of our former colleagues, the governor of New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill, announcing that 6,600 non-U.S. citizens were added to the voter rolls in New Jersey, and nearly 400 of them voted in the election, voter ID ensures the sanctity of our elections and ensures confidence by the American people in our elections. And so it is imperative that we pass this legislation, and the American people should watch how every single member votes on this bill.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve and I am prepared to close.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New York.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm prepared as well. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll close by saying this. The bill before us is a crude combination of two completely unrelated bills, the so-called Stop Insider Trading Act and the Voter ID Act. The Voter ID Act is, of course, already a crude reformulation of the Save America Act. I've addressed both parts of the bill individually. Neither of them deserves passage. Frankly, neither of them deserves much serious debate. The first, the so-called Stop Insider Trading Act, is not a stock trading ban. Despite what everyone has said today, it simply is not. You can get the bill, download it, read it. It doesn't require people to sell stock that they own. The bill is a vote to allow members of Congress to continue to own and trade individual stocks. I don't know how to be clearer than that. The bill would let members of Congress keep every single share of stock they own. The bill would allow members to liquidate their holdings at any time, obviously when it's profitable for them. There's no divestiture required in this bill, and the bill does nothing to rein in the unprecedented, absurd, and deeply offensive corruption currently taking place in the White House. The bill is silent on the president, and I would note again that so far this year, the president has traded more securities than the entire Congress combined, all 535 members of the House and Senate. And does anyone believe for a minute that the president has less influence on the markets than individual members of Congress? So, judge that for yourself. Then there's the second, fully distinct part of this bill, voter suppression provisions taken right from the Save America Act. House Democrats support voter identification. We have included responsible ID provisions in the Freedom to Vote Act, and we've offered amendments at committee making this point crystal clear. Before us, this bill, however, would create a more restrictive regime than any currently in use in this country. More restrictive than Florida, more restrictive than Texas. The bill would eviscerate mail voting as we know it, forcing voters to include photocopies of their ID every time they mail a ballot. This measure is so extreme, the Republican governor of Ohio, Governor DeWine, vetoed a similar statewide measure because it would burden voters without preventing fraud. And this bill would throw our elections into chaos, the effective date being October 20th of 2026, 90 days from today, right in the middle of this midterm election. In 90 days, tens of millions of Americans will have already cast their ballots by person and by mail. This bill would upend the November midterms, and that is exactly the point. That is exactly the goal. I urge my colleagues to oppose this rehash again of the president's top legislative priority, the SAVE Act. I urge its defeat. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back my time.
Gentleman from New York yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As we close out today, I want to begin by thanking leadership for giving us this opportunity. We have not had a bill on the House floor on this topic with this opportunity before. I want to thank Speaker Johnson, Leader Scalise, Whip Emmer, but I also want to thank the members of this body who have doggedly worked on this issue, in particular, Congressman Chip Roy, as well as Brian Fitzpatrick, Tim Burchett, Anna Paulina Luna, and others for their feedback and work throughout the process to get to this point. Before us is the Stop Insider Trading Act. I want to touch on a handful of things that came up today about what is in and what is not in the bill, because I think this is important for the American people to know. Some of the arguments made today are what I call the Goldilocks argument. The bill doesn't do enough, the bill does too much. Let's take this moment to take a real and substantive step forward. I'll begin, as I close, by discussing what is in the bill. The bill ensures that members and lawmakers cannot use their positions to profit off of insider information. Insider trading, Mr. Speaker, is already illegal, and individuals who engage in it should be held accountable by the full force of the law. However, as we know, prosecuting insider trading is actually quite difficult. That's why this bill is so important, to provide a bright line rule to remove even the appearance of impropriety that someone has leveraged their position for financial gain. Under this bill, members, their spouses, and their dependent children are prevented from purchasing individual companies' shares of stock, period, full stop. The question then becomes, what if a member arrives in Congress with stock in their portfolio? Say they're saving up for their retirement or their children's college education. We provide an opportunity with 7 days advance notice to be able to make that sale. That 7 days advance notice tells the American people what is going on in advance, rather than current law, which allows a 30-day filing after the fact. This prevents members from being able to profit off of any insider information they may gain in this institution. The violations and penalties associated with this bill, Mr. Speaker, are steep. A fine equal to $2,000 or 10% of the transaction, as well as a disgorgement of profits. Violators would be forfeiting any gain realized if they fail to comply with this legislation. Legislation is critical in restoring trust in this institution. One of the challenges we face is that this institution 15 years ago passed the Stock Act, publicly disclosing any trade a member of this institution makes. However, the disclosure details the disclosure rules lack detail and are filed a month after the transaction. When you couple that with the increased attention to member trades, in particular through social media accounts, it has fueled public frustration. I believe this is our opportunity where we can simply stop members of Congress from trading individual stocks, period, full stop. Doing so removes even the appearance of wrongdoing. Americans should be confident that individuals working here are working on their behalf, not on behalf of their own financial interests. This bill is coupled with the Voter ID Act. In jurisdictions across this country, states that neighbor mine, like Illinois or Minnesota, or as far away as California or New York, voters can go to the polls on Election Day and cast a ballot without providing proof of their identity. Our Voter ID Act implements common sense election integrity measures by requiring voters to show photo ID when casting a ballot in federal elections. 24 states already require some form of photo ID to vote. The bill simply takes this standard and makes it nationwide. Both of these provisions are common sense reforms, but in particular, the Stop Insider Trading Act is a moment that we can make a tremendous step forward in the ethics here in the House of Representatives, in the Senate, and in this institution. At a period of time when Americans are struggling to gain confidence in Congress, this legislation before us gives us that opportunity to begin restoring the trust. I encourage all of my colleagues in this body today to vote in favor of the legislation before us. And Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 1438, the previous question is ordered on the bill as amended. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to amend Chapter 131 of Title V to require certain restrictions on stocks for members of Congress and their spouses and dependents, and for other purposes.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Magaziner of Rhode Island moves to recommit the bill H.R. 7008 to the Committee on House Administration.
Pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 19, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess for a period of less than 15 minutes.
All right, you're looking at the House proceeding in Washington, D.C. right now. It looks like they are holding up the vote on the Stop Insider Trading Act. Of course, has gotten very controversial because they were also talking about having an existing national voter ID law where some had said they want to keep it up to the states, but they apparently some of the Republicans want to go and have a voter ID bill where everybody across the country would have to show proof because certain states have different rules. But that's going to be a vote for another day. So let's go now to City Hall, where Mayor Brandon Johnson is speaking right now after City Council just wrapped up.
Because we refuse to accept decline as our future, and that comeback is happening across downtown. A recent study by the Chicago Loop Alliance found that more than 1.7 million visitors came to the Loop in the first quarter, generating $485 million in economic impact. That's a 15% increase from the same period last year. The Loop also remains a hub for creativity and innovation, with its creativity economy generating $50 billion annually and supporting more than 213,000 jobs, according to a report by the Arts Alliance Illinois. 3 years ago, we launched 6 office-to-residential conversion projects on LaSalle Street. Today, that effort has expanded to 25 projects across downtown. That's more projects than the last 20 years combined. Just last week, another conversion was announced at the Leahy Building in River North, bringing 70 more new homes in our city. Half of these projects are already permitted and under construction. Think about what that means. Buildings that once sat empty are becoming homes. Streets that quieted after the workday are becoming neighborhoods where people live, shop, and eat and support small businesses. Altogether, those projects represent nearly 3,900 new homes and $1.8 billion in investment. We're not simply filling vacant buildings. We are creating the kind of downtown that will remain vibrant for generations to come. Because when downtown succeeds, Chicago succeeds. A stronger downtown means more jobs, more opportunity, more economic activity, and more resources that we can then reinvest into neighborhoods across our city. And that's exactly what we are doing today. Last November, we produced the first central area plan in 20 years that projects downtown to grow by 100,000 new residents, 161,000 new jobs, and 12,000 additional overnight visitors by 2045 based on historic trends. And this winter, we announced a winning proposal for the city-owned property next to Pritzker Park on State Street in the Loop, the site of Elwood Blue's old apartment, which is planned for a $160 million tower with 300 mixed-income apartments. We also announced $800,000 for storefront improvement projects along State Street in the Loop, reinforcing its role as the spine of downtown. The groundbreaking for the 22,000-seat Chicago Fire FC Stadium in March represents the city's first new outdoor stadium in Chicago in 35 years and the first ever soccer stadium. And whether it's LaSalle Street, State Street, or commercial corridors on the south and west sides, our approach is the same. We're unlocking investment, encouraging private partners to believe in Chicago, and making sure that growth creates lasting public value. Earlier this year, we saw another powerful vote of confidence when Water Tower Place announced a $170 million redevelopment. These investments tell the world that Chicagoans are very clear about something. It's what we've always known, that Chicago is open for business, but we are not for sale. We're building an economy that works for working people and one that creates opportunity without leaving communities behind. And it's not just businesses choosing Chicago. The next generation is choosing Chicago too. Chicago was recently ranked among the top 5 cities in the nation for recent college graduates. We're investing in young people through our Chicago Youth Works. We're on track to again meet our projections in hiring young people for summer jobs. Youth employment is critical, and we have reached our landmark investment for 4 consecutive years. Because every young person deserves the opportunity to build skills, gain experience, and see a future for themselves in our city. And because we're making these investments, people want to be here and visit here. Last year, Chicago welcomed 56.8 million visitors who spent a record $21.5 billion in our local economy. That means more customers for neighborhood restaurants, more business for our hotels, more jobs, more opportunity. And that momentum is continuing this year. Through June, hotel room demand is growing at more than twice the national pace, and Chicago hotel tax revenue, it's already up more than 10% from last year. At the Taste of Chicago, we welcomed more than 300,000 people to Grant Park with over 80 vendors showcasing the best of Chicago's diverse food scene. Nearly 40% of this year's vendors were new, creating opportunities for small businesses and strengthening our local economy. And that growth means more revenue that we can reinvest in housing, community safety, economic development, and neighborhood revitalization. These investments are making Chicago a destination once again. That momentum doesn't stop when visitors arrive. It begins the moment that they land. Today, O'Hare International Airport is once again the busiest airport in the world by takeoffs and landings. That's something every Chicagoan can be proud of. It speaks to our city's strength as a global center of commerce, innovation, and opportunity. This work keeps Chicago connected to the world, and the world is certainly responding. This summer is expected to be the busiest in O'Hare's history. Airlines are adding more flights each year. New international destinations continue to choose Chicago. That demonstrates confidence. That's true confidence. Confidence in our airport, confidence in our workforce, confidence in our city, and now it's our responsibility to keep building on that success. And that's why we recently finalized an agreement to bring the new Concourse D to Chicago travelers. We're doing it on time and under budget. It's a $1.4 billion investment that will create more than 3,800 construction jobs and 19 new gates. It's the first major phase of the ORD Next Modernization Program, helping prepare O'Hare for the next generation of travelers. And we're doing it responsibly. And thanks to the support of our airline partners, this project is funded through airport-generated revenue, not local or state tax dollars. And that's exactly how government should work. When growth creates new revenue, we reinvest in ways that allow our city to continue to grow. We're creating a cycle of opportunity, and we're doing the same thing at Midway Airport. Last week, we approved agreements that will unlock at least $150 million in private investment to modernize Midway. New hangars, better facilities, improved infrastructure, hundreds of permanent jobs. Those investments also improve runway safety and ensure that when these agreements come to an end, those upgraded facilities belong to the people of Chicago. And that's the model that we're building. We leverage private investment, we protect taxpayers, and we create jobs. And we build public assets that serve generations to come. And that's what Chicago's comeback looks like. It looks like cranes in the sky, storefronts opening their doors, families moving into new homes, businesses choosing Chicago, hotels welcoming more guests than they have in years, and travelers who are filling our airports. And a city that's proving every single day that when we invest in people, Chicago's best days are always ahead of us. Thank you all for your indulgence. With that, I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Good afternoon. 2 questions each, and we're going to go down the line, please. Yes. Let's promise you go first.
Hi, Mayor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So last week, during the budget hearing, your administration was non-committal on making the second half of the advanced pension payment. Why the, I guess, hedging on that? And can you now say whether or not the city will make that full payment?
Well, there are still some circumstances that are beyond our control, one of which is that the delay that we are experiencing with Cook County. And until that is absolutely resolved, I have to make a prudent decision to make sure that all of our options are still available to us.
There was a resolution or legislation introduced today by some in the City Council Coalition calling for that payment to be made in full by October 31st. Will you fight against that ordinance in September, I guess, to keep your options open? Or, what do you say to the City Council? They did put that into the budget, and you're now saying it may not be prudent to make the payment.
What I'm saying is that obviously there are circumstances that I don't have control over, and I think it's incumbent upon City Council and to continue to work with my administration to ensure that we are making responsible decisions that benefit taxpayers. Now, what would have been helpful if the same coalition that moved on a budget that has now created a $90 million shortfall, if they were as prudent as what they are suggesting in this moment, we would not be in this particular predicament that we're in today. So that's why it's helpful for the people of Chicago to know that there's a city council that's working with me, right? Because look, if you see and look with an objective eye, if all of the proposals that I put forward, particularly as it relates to revenue and having a budget that speaks to the interests of working people and not the interests of corporations and the ultra rich, those budget projections are overperforming. We're not in this predicament if we don't have city council that is more aligned with the interests of corporations than they are with the interests of working people.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
Last week, your budget director mentioned that the city has until about the end of August to deal with that $90 million shortfall. Do you expect to bring the city council back in August at any point to deal with potential options?
As far as an official council meeting?
Yeah.
No, I don't know if an official council meeting is necessary there. We do need participation, though, right? And that participation, I believe the people of Chicago would appreciate as well. Look, we had two options. We could challenge these big corporations to put more skin in the game and pay their fair share, or we could once again provocate the burden on working people. The city council decided to provocate working people in defense of corporate interests. That was the wrong thing to do. There is a way in which we can make good on, I believe, the promise to protect working people, but that's going to require some cooperation from members of city council. I believe that they're amenable to the type of ideas that have proven to be effective that I put forward. They'll get another opportunity to remain engaged with my administration to get it right.
Do you see this number being thrown around, the 2,000 city job layoffs, as a potential solution to the gap, as something that could come to pass, or are you looking at other options to avoid that, and what are some of those options?
Well, what that number does, it actually crystallizes what I warned people of. Remember, I was in this very seat months ago saying that their projections were exaggerated. They were. We actually put forth a more modest, conservative projection, and our projections are overperforming. I believe that's the responsible way to move a budget. And look, the number that we're talking about is essentially the exact number that we would have raised through a corporate head tax. I mean, this challenge is solved by going towards the areas of revenue streams that are performing the best. And those are revenue streams of those who have more means, right? I mean, these are the same corporations that received the largest tax break in the history of the world. So it was not unreasonable for the people of Chicago to expect city council to protect working people. That was not an unreasonable expectation. It certainly was a disappointment that they didn't do it. And of course, we don't want layoffs. I'm going to do my part to come up with solutions. We need city council to join in the effort to protect working people, because that's what people across the country are calling for. Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. The owners of
All right, you're just hearing from Mayor Brandon Johnson there talking about what he was considering to be a Chicago comeback. He was projecting 160,000 more residents are trending that way from the year 2045. He was talking about the investment and all the business development around the area. He even mentioned the Blues Brothers, of the old Elwood Blues apartment building right over there on State and Van Buren there, talking about O'Hare having one of the busiest times in their history, the confidence, the tourism coming back, but also the fact that there could be a $90 million budget shortfall, and there's still the possibility of calling alders back in August during kind of that lull session right there to talk about how they're going to go and plug that budget hole there, because originally a few weeks ago they projected it around $132 million with the hole there. But he also said that there's still some solutions that they could talk about, and he even mentioned, which got ended up being shot down last year, was the corporate head tax. But there's still that possibility that you could have 2,000 city jobs, 2,000 of those people being laid off in order to fill the budget there. So some possibilities, but no action at this point. But we got to move on here, because one thing, we were talking about comebacks here. One thing that has made a comeback in the last few years is vinyl. There are so many people buying records again, and I think that's just such a beautiful thing, personally speaking, right there. But sometimes when you get these albums at all the great record stores around there, sometimes it comes with scratches, it skips, sometimes there's water damage. You don't know what you're going to end up buying here. But potentially there's a solution for all those vinyls that you can't play anymore. It's all about restoring them and maybe even giving them new life. So we got Matt Jensick from Reckless Records, who is here on Chicago Live, and he's got a great background with all those albums. I don't know how many you've got behind you, and that's just one wall of record right there. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, it's my pleasure. And there is this new program that you guys just started, Reckless Records. And if you're not familiar, one of the best record stores around. You got Wicker Park, The Loop, you got Lakeview. There's this new program that you guys just started back in June when it comes to taking your old vinyl and putting it to good use. And how does this all work, and what's been the response so far when people are bringing in some of their old vinyl that simply just won't play or it skips?
Well, first of all, it's a pilot program that was presented to us through Warner Records, who are obviously, a giant record company. And the idea is, just like you said earlier, records that are unplayable, like maybe they're scratched or they were water damaged, or sometimes maybe even broken or whatever. Traditionally, there isn't much you can do about that stuff. A lot of it would just go in the garbage or whatever. And I think the idea here is to be able to reuse that product in a way to hopefully even make new vinyl records out of it. The idea is sustainability. Hopefully, there's a lot of materials involved in making vinyl records. It's petroleum based, and looking towards the future, it just seems like something that like we all need to be aware about. It's the world is struggling with a lot of this stuff with sustainability, and we'd like to participate in any way we can.
I think you're going to have a lot of people who want to do this, because there's so many people who have albums, whether they have a turntable or not, and they could put some of those old vinyls to good use. Maybe they don't want to play them anymore, or just because there's damage to them. In fact, I recently inherited a lot of albums from my uncles, and some of them do. The majority of them play. However, the reason that I've got so many of these is because my uncles had this place, and they had a flood in their basement, and some of them had a significant amount of water damage, and you'll still see some of the stains on some of the liner notes there. But then also some of them actually do play, which has been such a great thing there. But something else about this this new pilot program that you guys are doing right now is the fact that sometimes these albums just need a deep cleaning, and that they do have new life. You can play them again, and you guys potentially will sell them again, especially if people have casted these albums away.
Yeah, vinyl is actually pretty resilient, especially records that were made like in the 50s through the 80s. That was the peak of when that was the main format for music, and they were made pretty well. one of the important things we want to get across to people here is we're still doing business as usual, buying records from people every day, and the idea is the most important thing is that we still want to buy the records and we want to sell them. There's ways that you can clean them. We have professional like cleaning machines, they're vacuums, and sometimes we can put a record through one of those that looks like it was in the like dirt or something and covered with dust or fingerprints, and they can come out and sound almost like brand new. So what's really important that we want to make sure to clarify with our customers is that we still want to buy their records and we still want to sell them, because most of like 90% of the time they're fine, but there just are instances where they are unplayable, or like I said, maybe even just flat out broken or whatever. And the idea here is to try to get that stuff from being thrown away, and hopefully making new records out of it. It's a very early stage with this program, but the way it was presented to me was any research that can be done to make this happen is worth considering, in my opinion.
I'm reminded of what my father told me when I was younger. He'd always, when I would be taking the album and putting it back, he would always make sure I'm grabbing the ends. He's like, don't put your fingerprints on there. You're going to ruin the album.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I don't know if Reckless sells these, he used to have these little sprays and a brush that goes along where you can go and clean it. Is that sort of that cleaning that you were talking about how you could just get rid of the fingerprints and the dust and all that in order for the music to start playing on that vinyl? Because after all, you're taking a needle and you're scratching it across the vinyl.
Yeah, there's a variety of ways to clean records. We sell like various cloths and sprays and brushes and things like that. It really, like anything that's delicate or whatever, like there's different ways to approach it. We prefer to use the vacuum machines that we have at the store. They work really, really well, but the cloths and the brushes are really good for just like basic maintenance or whatever.
In the time that you've been doing this, when some have been surrendering their vinyls and putting them to good use, have you found some rare finds in there where you're able to say, hey, this actually can be saved, we can use this, and you're kind of looking at the person going, man, I'm surprised you're getting rid of this album?
Yeah, I mean, we try to like educate people that are selling stuff to us as well. Like, sometimes people don't realize what they have. Sometimes they bring in really good stuff, but most of the time, Chicago's just such a big music city. People are pretty well informed here. Our customers are pretty knowledgeable. They usually know what they got, and but yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the idea here. Like we want customers to bring us the records, just like I said, like business as usual. And the idea for us is that we'll go through them, and if we determine there's nothing we can do to save it and sell it to somebody, we'll send it to this recycling program hopefully in the future, and they'll figure out a way to make some new ones.
I don't know if you're at the store right now or at your own place, Matt. You've got an impressive wall of albums. Do you know how many that you collect so far?
I kind of stopped counting a while ago. I don't know that I want to know at this point. It's definitely a lot. When we moved this, I'm at home right now. When we moved in, kind of took a while. But it's something that myself and my partner have been interested in since we were little kids, and now we do this for our career, and yeah, we love it.
And it's so cool because with the albums, there's a lot of artwork, not only on the front, but you get those cool liner notes. In fact, I bought an Eagles Hotel California album, and it was an original press, and it was a lot more expensive than what they would usually sell for a used one. And the guy at the counter told me, he said, hey, I just want to let you know you've got an original press, and it's got the original artwork in there. And you open it up, sure enough, it's got all members of the Eagles on there, going from Don Henley to Don Felder at the end. Those are the cool things when you shop at some of those record stores like Reckless. You'll find some of those rare things and get stuff in the pristine condition, or even like you get like Rolling Stones Sticky Fingers. Like if you get that now, all you do is you get the album, but it's a picture of a guy's crotch area. But the original one, there was an actual zipper on the actual album. Yeah. I mean, do you get those very often, like those original like Sticky Fingers presses?
Yeah, I mean, they made, it was a pretty popular record when it came out, so they made a lot, but it's definitely, at this point, 50 ish years old, so those are pretty scarce. But we do get them from time to time for sure. But yeah, it's always an exciting one to see come through, like that, and like maybe the Velvet Underground record with the banana on it or whatever. Like there's definitely some cool special stuff they did back in the day. But they do that now with new pressings too. There's all kinds of fancy versions, and it's pretty cool.
Especially because I just bought a Steely Dan Asia record, and track 1 skips a little bit, but the rest of the album is fine. But when we were talking about some of the vinyl that gets recycled into some of the new stuff, the few albums that I see that are like the new artists around that are making albums that are really, really popular, is you'll see someone like Taylor Swift who's making some great albums, and they're selling them at a premium there. I wonder if because there's been this resurgence of vinyl, that there is this use of wanting to recycle so many of the vinyls, because as you were kind of describing, Matt, that there was this kind of complicated process. You use petroleum, and it's not like grabbing your phone and listening to it on Spotify. There's a big process for why we need all the parts for these albums and be able to restore them.
Yeah, it's true. I think I've talked about this a lot of times with people, but a lot, especially like kids now, like Gen Z or whatever, they were brought up with almost no physical sort of like media. I mean, almost everything they do is streaming, whether it be music or movies or sometimes even books. And I think there's something about that sort of lack of like handling something like physically that I think it's really attractive to especially younger people to physically hold something by like an artist or an author or whoever that they really like, and to be able to like have like a tangible sort of like relationship with that product. And like we see it every day. Our customer base is getting younger and younger, and it makes me really, really happy, because I just love, that's the whole reason we got, or myself personally, I would say one of the main reasons I got into this career is just because when I was a kid, I just loved going to those places, and I found a record store, generally to be like a place of learning and meeting people. And I feel like it's kind of gotten back to that. Like we see a lot of people in the store talking to each other and hanging out and having conversations about like movies or, seeing a concert or whatever. And we love to see it. That's what it's all about, really.
I think you summed it up perfectly about how we were lacking that community. And you said a lot of your customers are Gen Z, and they might have been lacking the social skills. They're lacking that community where they can come into a safe place, which is a record store, because everybody is going there for so many different reasons, but it's mostly for their love of music and that curiosity. And there's some really cool albums that you'll see there. They're not only just like the Black albums. I look at like Thundercat album, where there's like 4 or 5 different albums, and they're all different colors, and they're significantly smaller than what you would see in an album, but it's bigger than a 45. So you kind of have those conversations. Say, hey, if you check that out, have you seen this? That looks really, really cool. And I think that what you guys are doing here with this pilot program and the recycling, I think it kind of continues that conversation into something really cool.
Yeah, it's important that we consider these things, like we all know, like that environmental issues are really important. Like we are all affected by this, like noticeably over the last like couple of years. And we need to think about this stuff, like whether or not this is going to be some big successful thing or not. Like it's too early to say, but like I said, the concept behind it, like I can't see how anyone wouldn't want to at least like attempt to make that happen. So that's the idea here, is to get into something that that can allow us to continue to make these products. And I think the goal here is to expand it to more stores around the country, and hopefully internationally, if it can work out, if this program can get off the ground.
Just like Reckless Records, you guys got a great shop going there. Lastly, Matt, before I let you go, What are you listening to right now? What's been in your rotation right now of vinyls, or do you have a tradition? Like one of the things I like to do on Sunday when I'm off is I like to have a Sunday vinyl where I go and grab a random album from my collection. I go and I just play it.
Well, I just went to see Rush the other night, so I'm kind of like in that zone right now. Like
you're doing like 2112
kind of obsessively thinking about them still, but they were a big band for me when I was a kid. But yeah, like all kinds of stuff. I'm trying to think of the last thing that I played at the store. Yesterday, I listened to a kind of audiophile version of the Police Synchronicity record that we had at the store. A lot of times what I do is just like go through our new arrivals and just listen to things that like I hadn't heard in a while or I haven't heard. As far as new records go, I'm trying to think of something that I've been listening to. Man, I can't really think of anything. I'm gonna stick with Rush.
The 2112, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Rush, and of course you'll get so many of the real like musical purists out there, who are like big Neil Peart fans who love his drumming and all that. So I'll tell you what, Matt, you're giving us lots to go in, and you're inspiring me because now I got to go and buy a few Rush albums right there because, I mean, hey, who doesn't like Rush? Matt Jensik, co-owner of Reckless Records, thank you so much, and thank you for letting me pick your brain about what vinyls you're listening to right now.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure, sir. All right, the time is now 2:46. Don't go anywhere. We got plenty more coming up right here on Chicago Live. Welcome back here on Chicago Live. It is 2:48, and with us now, welcome back.
Thank you.
Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls.
Good to be here. Yeah, mom of two now.
Congratulations
Thank you.
again. It's so great to have you. I mean, you picked a great week to be back, but it's also,
nice and calm.
Well, it's nice and calm, but it's also a good week to be back because we've been focused so much on the heat and some of the extreme weather we've had. And today, I mean, woke up, it was like in the 60s.
Yeah, easy peasy. This morning, if you were out and about this morning, I'm sure you noticed it was gorgeous, almost kind of fall-like. So we had some locations that were actually starting off the day in the 50s. And look at this shot. It is beautiful. We can finally see clear blue skies. So, you know, the first half of the day, we were kind of under some cloud cover. We had some clouds coming in off of the water, but now it's beautiful, it's sunny, and this is going to set the tone for really the rest of the work week. It's going to stay really nice and sunny, and temperatures, They are going to begin to warm up a little bit after today, but it's going to be a very gradual climb. We're not getting hit with the 90s tomorrow. We have several days to kind of build up to that, so it's going to stay pretty comfortable.
This is just so unusual because we've been dealing with not only the extreme heat, but then just the smokiness around everything.
Yeah.
Where last Thursday and Friday, even into Saturday, it was it was just smoky out there. And I was joking when I'm walking through the loop. You could barely see anything. You could smell the smoke, and people are leaning over against and having a cigarette.
And still smoking.
It's still smoking
like
around
the
there.
environment is doing it for us now these days. So fortunately, air quality is great out there now. So we're out of the even unhealthy for sensitive groups. So we're in good shape now. We don't have to be concerned about that the rest of this week, even going into this upcoming weekend. As of now, I'm really not overly concerned about the wildfire smoke making a return. So I think we're going to be in really good shape. If you've been a little stir crazy, I know I was going stir crazy last week because it was 1, too hot, but 2, we had the unhealthy air. Now we can kind of breathe easy. That the rest of this week looks great. Lots of sunshine, temperatures. Again, we're going to be climbing our way back up to near normal in the next few days. Normal for this time of the year sits around 85 degrees. Normal low is around 67. So we're going to have another night tonight that is way below average, but it's almost like that little taste of fall. I'm here for it.
I like that when it's so nice out in the evening and you could just open up your windows.
Give the ACs a rest, right?
Give the AC a rest, and then also just with the smoke, we were talking about this. Anybody who's had dogs and they want to go walk them, if Mama 2 now, you want to go and take a walk for your kids, you're thinking, I don't want to take them out right now.
Well, and it's made me realize that my saving grace has been going for walks every time my baby's upset, and when I can't go outside, I'm like walking the halls of my building. So I know I'm not the only one, feeling cooped up with the kids. So yes, things are looking good, and I think a lot of us are just really grateful now that the wildfire smoke has moved down from our region. Unfortunately, it's still being felt, especially off toward our east, over on the East Coast still, and in places even like Ohio still dealing with that as well. But here at home, we're in good shape.
Yeah, in Ohio, in Cincinnati, where I just came from, they had a lot of rain in a short amount of time where everything was flooded, and it ended up being kind of a disaster in a lot of those areas, and especially northern Kentucky as well.
Yeah, well, and speaking of rain, so we've actually gone, I believe today is the 17th day in a row that we haven't had measurable rainfall at O'Hare, and we haven't seen a stretch like this in decades of this long without rain in July. So we're due for it, but if you were to look at just the drought monitor, it still shows that we're in pretty decent shape, although you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt because those only come out every Thursday morning. So we'll get an update tomorrow morning on kind of how we're doing when it comes to water and the drought monitor tomorrow. But I think with the last couple of weeks kind of stacking up now with being dry, we could start to see some abnormally dry conditions developing. Now, if we're talking numbers, the average amount of rainfall that we have in the month of July typically lies right around 3.7 inches or so. We've already seen 3.5, but if you were in the city for the 4th of July weekend, you know that all of the rain came down that weekend and kind of ruined a lot of people's plans. So if you look at the numbers, we're already at 3.5 inches for this month. So if you were only looking at that, it seems like we're in good shape, but it all came at once.
And it's funny how you were mentioning drought right now, because back in April we had a significant amount of rain where we were talking about flooding of some of the rivers, specifically the Swains River up by the Chain, where some people's homes were underwater, and you're thinking, how do we go from that to all of a sudden we're talking about drought, and especially because you've got farmers probably thinking about the harvest in a little bit.
Right. So, when it comes to the drought and drought conditions, it really doesn't take that many weeks of dry conditions to throw you way back. So you can get a lot of rain months prior, and that's okay for those months and maybe the month that's immediately right after, but it's amazing how quickly things can really dry out. And what we need are these all-day rains that can just for one day, an all-day rain for one day, give us a break, let us dry out. But what we've been experiencing has really been these, huge storms coming through, dumping inches of rain all at once. And when that happens, it turns into runoff. It's not so much being taken in by the dry ground, it's running off into our streams, our rivers, our creeks. So then we are dealing with, the flooding concerns in those situations.
I know that's one of the things that we're going to be continuing to monitor right here. How's your first week back been so far?
It's been, it's been good. I think all moms can relate that the first week we're like, where's my baby? Bring her back, So I wish I could just load her up and bring her with me to work, but it's been good. It's been good to be back in a routine again, and you just kind of start feeling a little more like yourself, which is nice.
Well, especially because you're away and people think like, oh, it's time off. It's like, it's really not time off.
I've had a lot of people ask me, how was your vacation? And I was like, well,
Don't say
if
that.
on vacation you wake up 3 or 4 times a night, every 2 hours.
Like, this is not the vacation, this is the bonding time.
Yes,
But it's time that you
it's-
need.
It's the most wonderful, beautiful time, and I'm so grateful to have had it.
And especially because now you're doing this, but you're also still monitoring the weather as well. So you're really not taking time off. That's the other thing.
Well, the funny thing is, in news, or especially, meteorology specifically, I can speak for myself here. You get into this because it's a hobby, so you're always kind of taking a look at the weather. You never really stop. Even on your days off, you're still, doing the work and being like, what's it going to be like today? So that we can judge everyone who's dressed wrong.
and even when you were about to go on leave, and you were supposed to be done, you were still at the office. I'm like, what are you doing here?
Yeah,
I thought you were away.
I was still here.
She loves
Yeah.
it that much.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's good to be back.
And Emily did such a nice job, right? It was, I think you had, a few hours before you were going on maternity leave. She gave a nice presentation to my high school at St. Patrick High School. So they were very appreciative of that as well, because she goes above and beyond everybody.
Well, thank
beyond
you.
the call of duty here. But you're going to be working on stuff not only for 4, 5, and 9 o'clock tonight. What can people expect in your forecast?
Well, the forecast is actually very, very quiet. So the next couple of days looking good, lots of sunshine. We're finally breaking into that sunshine out there right now. If we take a look at the 7-day forecast, you'll see that, we have lots of sun. Temps are going to be rising into the 80s, 82 degrees on Friday, Saturday, 86. We're in the 90s going into Sunday and Monday. Clearly my little icons have not transferred here.
Uh-oh.
But what I can tell you is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we are likely staying mainly dry. The next chance of rain isn't until Sunday and Monday, but even that, if you're holding your breath for showers or storms, you're hoping for some water for your lawns, your flowers, your gardens, things like that, I wouldn't hold your breath, because Sunday and Monday, it's just a chance. It looks very scattered in nature, not a widespread rain like what we need. And, that combined with the heat, I think we could be starting to see those drought conditions developing, or at least abnormally dry conditions developing.
And how fitting that the heat is going to turn on next week, because on Saturday, Chicago Bears rookies report to camp, and then on Tuesday, the veterans report. So many who want to watch Bears practice, the summer training camp, will be going to Hallis Hall, and then it always seems like that's when we get into these heat warnings and everybody drinking a lot of water and making sure that they might even change the practice times around that, because we've covered this before where the heat ends up being so bad that they have to change the practice times during that.
Well, that's what you get in July and August, and it's as expected. But yeah, don't forget, average high is right around 85. So when we get these, days in the 90s, that's just so normal for this time of the year. But, when we start talking about football, you start thinking about days like today when you have the cool air, right? And so we'll see what we can do for the Bears.
I like that.
Yeah.
Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls, right back here at Fox Chicago. Thank you so much for coming in on Chicago Live.
Yeah, of course.
All right, it is now 2:57. We'll be right back, and of course, check out Emily 4, 5, 9 o'clock tonight. We'll see you then. back, everybody, to Chicago Live. It's just about 3 o'clock, and sometimes you have to look to the younger generations to form future technology. And what you are about to hear is this new technology that some students at the University of Chicago have developed. It's something that you would only see in a movie or a TV show. I want to bring this next guest on because I don't want to just put out wrong information of what they're working on here. Can we get Willa Yang, who is a PhD student at the University of Chicago, in to talk about what is known as Bloom Beacon? Willa, are you here?
Yes. Thanks for having me, Brett.
It is my pleasure. When I'm reading what this is about here, it's a touch screen, and you touch it, and then it just comes into the air. How does this all work?
Yeah, so Bloom Beacon is an on-demand touch display that we created. And what I mean by that is it physically appears, blooms when you need it, and disappears when you don't. Traditional screens, like my phone or tablet, they take up the same amount of space, whether I'm using them or not. But Bloom Beacon challenges that assumption. When you need a display, the device spins or blooms an interactive surface that you can see, touch, and feel. And when you're finished using it, it just stops spinning and collapses back into a compact line.
I look at something like that straight out of the future, something that I would see in the movie Star Wars. What inspired you all to work on something like this? Or was it something like art was inspiring real life here? Or were there other applications where you said, we could use this?
Yeah, so my current research, I'm really passionate about empowering people to augment their physical spaces. And I'm always imagining digital interfaces that blend into our environment, like lots of sci-fi films imagine. But if you look at screens in our home right now, they just look like black holes. They create clutter. And to me, that's not how digital interfaces should elegantly blend into our environment. And I want the interface to be minimally visible, minimally invasive, and they appear only on demand. And as you said, it's not just me imagining it. A lot of the films like Iron Man 2, Black Panther, where their interfaces just, they appear in the midair and it expands into large touchable matter, and they just collapse and disappear after people finish playing with them. So it's something that seems very futuristic. And it's really exciting that we're taking a very small step toward making that vision real.
Yeah, you're talking about Professor Stark, or even like when I see in Star Wars, you have the hologram when you see the Jedi or even the Sith talking to one another. And what do you think? So how would this work? Would I have like an iPad or some kind of tablet in order to make this application come to life? And what was the process like of creating this technology that seems just very out of this world?
It is pretty odd. Well, okay. So let me start with an application. One application I came up with is the augmentation of a basic speaker. So I've always wanted a vinyl player, but I don't have the space or the money for one. And all I have is my small basic speaker with a few buttons on it. So I imagine, how can I maybe augment my basic speaker with Bloom Beacon? I can just grab it and place it on top of my speaker. And then when I want to listen to music, it just blooms into a interactive record player interface, showing the album art, and it lets me tap the display to control the music like a DJ. And when I'm done, it just collapses back into a tiny line, and my small speaker can just sit in a corner and it's not taking too much space. And how it does that is because it when it's idle, it is just a line, and it renders that interactive surface using rotation. It is a very weird and seemingly dangerous interaction, I would say. But it's actually safe.
And do you have to give it prompts then, or is it kind of just knowing what you want? You're saying, hey, I want to play this album right now by Jack White. You're like, hi, do you have to give it commands in order for it to come to life like that?
I think that's part of the future work that we're thinking. So right now, we're focusing on output. We want to at least make something that can allow people to imagine how such digital interfaces can exist in our life. And then if people accept it, if they like it, then we can hook it up with context-aware intelligence so that the device knows what to show where depending on where it's placed.
I'm thinking just also, what a way to present something to a class or somebody who's in the business roles who needs to give a presentation. This is a way to really take something as you described it, you look at it at a screen, it's like a black hole. Why not make it come to life so everybody could see it and touch it and interact with it and make it play stuff and make it talk back to you? That it seems like that might be a big inspiration for why you and so many bright minds at the University of Chicago have come up with this concept.
Yeah. We actually, when we demoed it, we actually talked to some urban designer reached out to us, and one of our applications shows that it augments a physical map. Right on the map, it's static, it's passive. But what if you want to show interactive weather information wherever you place the device? What if you want to show the heat map? What if you want to overlay the population density, at specific locations on the map? So our device actually allows that. It is, it augments our passive material, passive surfaces without having to replace them with expensive and smart one. All you have to do is just kind of move this boom beacon on top of it, kind of move it around. And in the future, it will know where it is and it will know what content to show. But I think on the output side, we're already enabling that.
Oh, Will, how long have you and some other students been working on this? And something like this, if you look back 10 years ago, would even something like this be, in your wheelhouse in order to make this become a reality? It's one of those things, once again, it's just like, it seems like something out of the future, but we're at that point now where the future's now.
Yeah, so for this project, it took me from the ideation to final thing, it took me about entire year. And initially when I pitched my idea to my colleagues, to other people around me, there was like kind of huge resistance from them. They just don't think it's gonna work. They think, people are not gonna like it. You're just not gonna make it work. It's not gonna, be safe. It's not gonna be interactive. So it wasn't easy in terms of kind of mentally to power through that, facing all of the questions and the criticisms. But I believe in what I believe, so I powered through. But I wouldn't imagine myself kind of inventing something of this before I actually had the idea.
Well, when you invent something like this, what is going to be your next step? Because now you've taken this, you're a PhD student. I don't know if this is part of your if your thesis of your studies, but essentially now are you pitching this to a tech company for saying, hey, how can we develop this? Or are you looking at this and saying, I want to create something totally on my own?
I care about practicality in my research, so I do want to make my research into products. Either I make it or someone make it for me. So I do want my research to enter people's everyday life.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this. The design is based on persistence of vision, POV motion. It's notable for using spinning, flexible blades that are safe to interact with here. I mean, you read that and you just think, this is going to be interesting. That I could literally just touch it and interact it. Take something that was on a surface, on a phone or a tablet, and make it come to life. And it's all about saving space and putting it back when I don't need it. Have you guys tested this out for an audience yet?
Yes, we did user studies, and because of the constant questions that people had, the resistance that people I faced, I was really curious how people would perceive or comfortably interact with such a weird device, seemingly dangerous interaction. And it's actually a surprise to me. So we let people touch it, explore the material, and they describe the blades as soft, elastic, spongy. And then we kind of turn it on, it spins up. And people were initially a little bit hesitant about touching it. And then I just performed the demo, and just comfort level of interacting with the device is drastically increased, and people just immediately got comfortable touching, like poking and playing with it. So I think that's a really good sign, and it also kind of hints that maybe our device works especially well at personal space for repeated use, rather than something that you just walk up and use without any introduction.
Well, I think about when you had some of the virtual reality glasses that came out, when people put them on for the first time, it is going to be strange because this is all they know. They live in the real world and they don't know what this new world is all about. It's similar to your product that you're talking about right now with the Bloom Beacon here. And what do you think this really says about the University of Chicago and students who are in your program to be able to think of something and then put it to practical use and create something that nobody has ever seen before? What do you think that says about you, the rest of the students in the University of Chicago?
Yeah, I think that the students in our department are all kind of very smart, hardworking. They have brilliant ideas. And I think what's really difficult in the research process is not only have brilliant ideas, but also kind of actually making it into real thing. So that would involve, we have to kind of have a vision of what we think the future should be. And then when we implement the stuff from bottom up, or when we interact with actual users, we hear about the feedback. So these kind of top-down vision and bottom-up implementation, they kind of meet in the middle. So kind of balancing that was also, a lot of students do in their everyday life.
You mentioned something about having practical use for this creation. Where do you see this invention going in an ideal world from your perspective?
We have seen, as you mentioned, AR glasses, augmented reality glasses. Well, augmented reality, they seem to only, or like mainly exist in the wearables. You have to wear them. That's also part of my motivation. I don't want people to have to always wear something, because people maybe just don't wear things in their homes a lot. I want to make them just kind of exist in our environment. So I think that's kind of my approach of augmented reality. And I like to think, whether this is something that, a non-tech user would use, or like would be able to understand. The reason why I want it to be small when it's idle is also because I want to allow people to easily manipulate it. When you give the people the freedom, when you make things small, compact, manipulable, people are just going to be empowered to do it. And they can really freely position it, augment their environment in their own ways.
It's kind of like, give me limitations because it'll set my ideas free. And it seems like that's the inspiration for what we're talking about here with Bloom Beacon. All right, Will, before I let you go, what is the next step in this? And can we see this potentially going to market soon?
I wanted to become productorial if I could do that. I think for me, as you said, I want to make it like intelligent. I want to maybe blend AI context-aware ability to it, so that it actually knows what it's doing. It can help people when they need help. It can pop up the right interface when they think it's need to. And also in terms of size, I think it can totally go from a dot into a surface. So right now it goes from a line to a surface, but I think it's totally possible to make it go from a dot to a surface.
Well, Willa Yang, I think you are on the right path, and science is all about collaboration and exploring ideas and trading off ideas. I think you all are onto something that could potentially change the world. Willa Yang, PhD student, University of Chicago. Thanks for being here on Chicago Live.
Thank you.
All right, its time is now 3:14. Don't go anywhere. We got plenty more right here on Chicago Live. Welcome back, everyone, to Chicago Live. It's almost 3:17 now. We just had a census count, and some people may look at it as just, well, it's a census. It really doesn't affect me, but it really impacts so many people for a few different reasons. We're talking about when they count how many people are in a specific area, whether it's a state, a city. It relies on representation in Congress, but it also makes a difference when it comes to funding for things like public services, public schools, all of those things that really make an impact on everything of our everyday lives, and even public safety. These are all very important things, but sometimes the count could be off. And there is one city right now that is trying to take a proactive approach to make sure that when they count the numbers, they count the population for the census, no mistakes happen once again. So with us to talk a little bit about what ended up happening is Mayor John Lash for the city of Aurora. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Brett, thanks for having me on.
It is my pleasure, Mr. Mayor. So what happened? It looks like there was a miscalculation or a miscount when it came to the city of Aurora.
Sure. Well, a lot of municipalities struggle to get counted accurately, and as the U.S. Census Bureau did in 2020 because of COVID. A lot of people were not opening their doors. It made it more challenging for the Bureau to make their counts. The city of Aurora fell 17,000 people short, which is costing us $4.3 million each and every year that we go without an accurate count. So you hit the nail on the head when you said these are the numbers that not only determine our budget, but they also determine how many police we need, how many fire we need. When we are working on doing our strategic plan, we use that census number to rationalize our decision making and plan for the future.
You think about $4.3 million a year in revenue. Some people may say that's a drop in the bucket, but I'm guessing you're going to have a much different take on this because, I mean, that is a significant amount of money for even a size of Aurora when you consider they miscalculated by 17,000 residents.
Sure. And when you think about it, when I took office a little bit over a year ago, one of my biggest challenges was our general fund was about $30 million short. So previously to correcting this problem and other budgetary decisions, they've been borrowing from other accounts and putting the city further into debt. So we're trying to fix that, and it's imperative that Aurora residents know that if they get a mailing from the U.S. Census Bureau, that they're doing themselves a favor, doing our community a favor, by filling it out as quickly as possible and getting that count back to the U.S. Census Bureau so we can correct these numbers moving forward in 2028.
You know, especially because now, 2028 is going to be the next year that they do the census numbers here, because you're thinking every single year for those 8 years, the city is being penalized right here, and that's when city governments have to go and be very, very strategic and think about solutions of how they're going to go and try to plug that budget hole right there. And how has that impacted how you've had to craft a budget and stay within your means?
Well, we're going through the budget process right now. In fact, I was just pulled out of a budget meeting where we were literally, because we had to make such deep cuts last year, just the basic things like how to assault our parking facilities and the walkways and everything on city facilities, we had cut back too deep. So this is just one step that we can take, is to make sure that we're accurately counted. So we don't have to go through that in the future. So we're just trying to right size the ship here. And I want to point out this is not a full census recount. We're not trying to recover the full 17,000 people. This is a new construction recount only, which means that we're not only recounting new construction, which is about 2,200 homes, but they're going to be connected to some of the older parts of towns and existing residential areas, because the line that by the census rules has to be contiguous throughout the city. So we're going to be hitting all 10 wards, and it'll be new construction, but existing residential housing will also be counted just because it's contiguous. But the main thing we want to tell people that live in the city of Aurora is that if they get one of these census mailings, it has a unique code on it, and that unique code is unique to their household, so they can follow the web link and then input the information for their household using their unique code. We will be sending people door to door to ask people to fill that out. Now, the first phase of this, the mailing went out today, July 22nd. It'll hit doors maybe this weekend, maybe Monday. So we'll start knocking on doors and asking people to fill out that code. And that first phase is going to be City of Aurora workers knocking on people's doors, asking them to fill it out. The second phase, beginning August 24th, is going to be U.S. Census Bureau people counting, and they'll actually be able to knock on the door and take your data for you. But the first phase, we really just want people to take that information the day it comes in the mail, take it over to their computer, enter their data, and have their household counted.
You brought up a really harsh lesson that we all have to learn here. I feel like this is like a Sebastian Maniscalco joke where, 20 years ago, if somebody rings your bell or knocks on your door, you have company. You want to pull out the Sanka. You want to get all the coffee cake ready for everyone. Somebody comes to your door now, everybody's afraid and is ducking down and trying to make sure that nobody's home here. But in this case, this was detrimental for the city of Aurora because that's a loss out on representation, a loss out on money right there that the city is continuing to have to pay for 2028.
It is. So we've put a serious investment into this to make sure that we can hire the people to go door to door. We're also advertising on social media in those census tracts that are being recounted. And of course, the Census Bureau is sending the mailers. So people don't have to answer their door if they take one of the other two options by clicking on the Census Bureau ad and figuring out what they got to do, or returning their account internally, and then they can go about their dinner and they don't have to hide behind their Ring doorbell.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, they have to go and shut the lights off because there's always that one guy upstairs who's like, what's going on, everyone? What are we doing here? So you're giving them the option to fill it out. So it's like, please fill out this paperwork. This is so important right here. And it sounds like the city of Aurora is doing their own PSA, by at least putting it out on social media. Or do you see this PSA even going out on television airways as well?
Sure. I'm not exactly sure what the communications department has. I think it's pretty focused, so I think it'll be targeted social media ads at this point, and then the door-to-door effort layered on top of that. We're attending a lot of HOA meetings to better inform the community. We certainly appreciate you having us on so we can talk to the community through your station as well, because it's pretty urgent. You heard the urgency in my voice that this is a big budget piece, and if people don't want to see their taxes increase, this is a step they can take. It's quick, it's easy. Take but a couple minutes to fill that form out online.
Oh, of course. And was it that obvious that the count was off, where you realize, man, they miscounted us by 17,000, and it's the account of 4.3 million a year that we're losing? When did you guys realize this was happening, and how did you go about contacting the census to say, hey, this was a little inaccurate?
So this has been an ongoing effort within the city. I don't know when the previous administration, I've only been in office a year and just under a year and a half. I don't know when they realized it or when they started to pursue changes. The other thing that's really hampered this process for us is that the federal government has had shutdowns and delays themselves and hiring freezes that has complicated it. But this is the fourth time the money's been appropriated, the staff is on hand, and everybody's been hired. So we're really optimistic that this will be carried out, and we're going to try and do what we can to carry it across the finish line and rectify this budget shortfall.
And it looks like the city's going to be able to assist those who are having trouble filling out the self-response form. They're going to be hosting multiple internet self-response assistant events. This is going to be at the Aurora Public Library District Santori Library, where city staff is going to be able to help people out and make sure that all the information that they're sending into the census is very, very accurate. You've really, Mr. Mayor, nailed it about why this is so important here. For anybody who's tuning in right now watching Chicago Live, what would be your message to them if they live in the city of Aurora and it comes to filling out that very, very important form, that census form?
I think probably for the next 5 to 6 months here in the city of Aurora, they're going to be hearing the mayor say one thing: get counted, get counted, get counted. Self-report, fill it out online, help us out, help yourselves out. It's something that there's no reason to delay or weigh your decision. This is a pretty simple one. And one other thing I want to highlight is you talked about people potentially hiding behind a Ring doorbell or shutting the lights off to avoid somebody knocking on their doors. This is completely confidential. So the U.S. Census Bureau will gather information from your household, but it stays with the U.S. Census Bureau. It's not going to ICE or any law enforcement agencies. This information stays with the U.S. Census Bureau and cannot be transferred. So it's completely confidential, and there's no reason that people have to not fill it out. The information, which a lot of the undercounted tracks are going to be in heavily Latino areas, so the information is going to be both in English and Spanish. And you pointed out that special session at the library that we're having. There'll be people on hand to help translate there as well, to walk people through the steps. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're reaching every one of the roughly 10,000 residents that we're trying to recount in this new construction count.
And another thing, because you brought up another really good point, because some people are very, very skeptical. They may not be trusting as much. If somebody is going to be helping them out from the city of Aurora, are they going to be wearing something special or going to have certain identification on them? Because unfortunately, when something like this happens, you hear about scams of, yeah, this guy posed himself as working for the census, but instead he was a scammer. Is there something that people should look out for when it comes to this new census, this new count?
Sure. The city workers will have city badges on, city identifying clothing. The census workers will be clearly identified as census workers, and they can look for those. They can ask for ID if they want. They're gonna have proper identification with them. And again, we're doing what we can to communicate trust. We're also working specifically with a community watch group here that's been very active in assisting families that have faced ICE abductions. So some of those people are going to be out in the community. They're known, trusted names that will help communicate that message clearly and build that trust with the community and the Census Bureau.
And lastly, Mr. Mayor, before I let you go, since Aurora found out that there was an inaccurate count, I can only imagine how many other cities are dealing with the very same problem that the city of Aurora had with that miscount, and how it impacts public services and the amount of money that could be going to the city of Aurora when it's probably going elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't have my finger on that pulse. I know that some municipalities do a better job than others. The other benefit to this, you pointed out that we're coming up on the 10 years anyway. 2030, we're all the entire United States will be getting recounted. Aurora have a well-trained workforce, and the community will understand the importance of it. So I think that the timing of this certainly would have been better to happen a few years ago financially, but it's good that we're doing it right before 2030, so our city staff go through the experience, know what they're doing, and we don't have to go through this again as a city.
Mayor John Lash, thank you so much. Get the word out for everybody in Aurora. Fill out the census forms, and they can keep the Sanka and all the coffee cake at their home, and they don't have to hide anymore, right?
That's right. Thanks, Brett.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Mayor John Lash. All right, it's almost 3:30 now on this Wednesday. We'll be right back on Chicago Live. artificial intelligence is getting really, really good. It just, in the last few years, looking at where it is now compared to where it was a few years ago, and sometimes the tech is so good that it has been taking over some of the human operations. And for anybody who has those doom and gloom AI, the end of the world kind of thing, this next story here is going to be one of those stories where you can say, see, I was right all along when it came to the AI here. So long story short, OpenAI received some of the most advanced AI models, but it ended up going rogue and ended up hacking a startup after it lost control of them during a security test. Pretty scary, right? I mean, this seems like this is Skynet from the Terminator right here. Ian Marlowe is here, who is the founder and CEO of PhiTech, to explain how this ended up happening here. So, Ian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon.
So, my friends who send me these doom and gloom things about AI, is this story epitomize why people should be worried about stuff like this?
It very much does. You know, what we talk about when we think about AI, is the pervasive nature of it to determine and find vulnerabilities within networks where it's able to take advantage of those for the areas as humans that we actually haven't identified. This is an area where now the AI, which is supposed to be in a secure box, if you will, I mean, they call it a sandbox for a reason, which is a test environment, actually evaluated and found the vulnerabilities to allow itself out of that supposed safe environment, and then goes and takes the opportunity to attack a network. So it showed its ability both to, take advantage of figuring out how to be Houdini and get out of the box, and then at the same time go and use the information that it's learned to attack another network.
Well, especially because it's like it was taking human instruction and saying, yes, I'll do this, but then when it's disobeying humans, that's the stuff that really, really scares me and some of my friends when they say, hey, this is the stuff it's gonna take over the world in a bad way. This is like the Terminator. And you have to wonder, Ian, how you stop something like this, especially because AI is getting so good, and to the point where some are wondering, do you even stop it when it gets this good, when it's starting to disobey humans?
Well, I think the answer that I think most people's heads will go to is very simply that obviously the negative aspects of it are growing faster than potentially the positive aspects of it. So what is the very next common human thought will be, well, if the machine and the machine learning is working so quickly to figure out how to break those vulnerabilities, then let me take a good version of it to try and figure out what are those holes and plug it before the bad version of the machine is able to do it. And that kind of leads you towards that Terminator idea. So the big concepts here is understanding what cybersecurity looks like in a world where it's not what we've experienced of the last 30 to 40 years, which is the human hacker and finding that way into networks, which usually was utilizing a human hole, whether it be phishing, getting an access to a password and tricking someone. There were still very difficult holes in networks for people to find. Now, something that is operating 24/7 without taking a rest at all, and learning at a geometric rate is doing those things significantly faster.
You brought up another really good point, the fact that even almost every company I've worked for, one of the requirements is to conduct a cybersecurity assessment every single year where you understand some of the risks. But this is just to your point, this was only bad actors and humans doing this. If artificial intelligence can do something like this, it's almost like they have to rewrite the program. And I'm wondering if you and your company have started to think about how to prepare for something like this that is just, it's like a fast-moving target.
Yeah, there's something that has been around for a long time called the penetration test, and those are brute force attacks on networks that companies like ours get hired to do to be able to find those holes. The truth is that not nearly the number of companies do those penetration tests, and that's a large part of where these, people and machines now are going to take advantage. We need to step up our game in being proactive in doing these tests to be able to close these loopholes, whether it's human or machine. So in some case, I can say that the reality, it's not that we need to do something new, it's that this is now a type of testing and type of proactive thing that not only needs to be done electively, but is going to need to be done consistently, regardless of the size of your organization or the size of network that you're running. If you are one person, you need it, and if you are 1,000 people, you need it.
And there's a lot of great uses for AI that we use in our everyday life, and it's good because they'll give us suggestions on things, and sometimes, I mean, even in our world, it can even help you write a script. Like it is so good, and then sometimes you can go in and say, "Hey, can you create me a mock-up of a future Chicago Bears stadium?" It could do that. I mean, there's a lot of great uses. You can be creative with it, but this is just another one of those reminders, Ian, that it could be used for nefarious reasons here. And have you heard of any other ways where AI is really there's been a breach and it's ended up creating some havoc and even stealing some information like that, where companies have to put out that notice of saying like, hey, there was a problem, AI stole this information, and now your social security numbers and other sensitive information is at risk?
Well, if you look at Anthropic, we all know earlier this year there was going to be a launch of, their next version of their AI platform, and that was curtailed basically because of comparable tests where it's very clear that the capability of that next level platform would be able to be used for these types of things, where the networks today and the defensive things that need to be done on the penetration side are not being done yet. So you're not just seeing it in just normal conjecture and smaller examples, where this obviously is a bigger story of something smaller that happened, but you're going to see these things happen in a bigger way. The question will be what we become comfortable with. When you think of the breaches that we've become used to over time, in the public, we're just now so used to the breach that could be on 200 million people, it's not even water cooler talk the next day. Now, the difference here is if machines are doing it, how much quicker, because before, if they took your identity, somebody would take that information and have to do something with it. The next level is once the machine gets it and then it has an immediate use for it, then it speeds that up at a significant rate. We need guardrails on the technology so that it doesn't allow those things. Now, today, if you work within, Claude and ChatGPT and a number of those platforms, and you ask it to do certain things, like as an example, and anyone can do this, you can ask it to find personal information on different individuals, which is even lesser than if you were to do some of this research yourself just on Google. Messages will come up saying that it's not allowed to do that, and it's not going to provide you that information, and it's inappropriate. So the guardrails have to be built in. This is an example where the guardrails were not built because it was expected to work within a sandbox, and it found its way out of the sandbox. So the guardrails need to be significantly stronger than what they are right now.
Yeah, that's why you've got to put the prompt in. You've got to be very, very specific and have detailed instructions so it doesn't go and start throwing sand and going out of the sandbox here. And there's been calls right here in the United States to put in more guardrails, more restrictions on artificial intelligence. At the same time, though, it sort of goes against the idea of science of, well, you shouldn't be putting restrictions on anything. It should be the free-flowing sharing of ideas. And then you've had some governments that have actually, in other countries, that have completely paused it altogether because they just think it's a detriment to society. But do you feel like there still needs to be this middle ground here where, yes, there needs to be some restrictions, but you can't just completely cut out AI altogether?
So here's the problem of where we are today in the cycle of technology. I very often talk about this one key word, and that is adoption rate. Okay, it's actually two words, sorry. But in your adoption rate, if you look at how long it took for a telephone to be in every house in America, it was decades. If you look at how long it took for there to be internet in every home, decades. If you look at how long to put a smartphone in the hand of every person, it's under 20 years. People don't remember that the smartphone is really from around 2008. Now, when we look at the adoption rate of AI, that adoption rate is not in terms of years or decades. It's in months and weeks. So in general, policy at the government level follows the technology by a number of years. And you had that because the adoption rate was slower. We do not have that advantage in this case, and it's why you're seeing the reactions the way that they are. Because if the adoption rate causes disruption, then we need to create the guardrails both at a technical and a policy level in order to allow that to properly roll out.
You're giving me so much more to think about in my conspiracy theorist brain about how you said, like with the telephone, it took decades for homes to implement it. Same thing with cell phones, decades. With AI, it has been fast, and it was like we had the pandemic, and then a few years later, boom, AI, and it has just gotten to this level where it's doing things that you wouldn't normally think about here. Any other lessons, Ian, before I let you go, about what this can teach us when it comes to ChatGPT having a breach because the AI models ended up playing out of the sandbox?
You know, the best offense in this case on an individual basis is a great defense, and it's no different than what it was only a few number of years ago. The number one issue in cyber incidents has to do with identity theft. Identity theft leads to issues on the financial basis, whether it's, money being moved that shouldn't be moved, or issues with loans being taken out inappropriately. So number one is be careful with your information, be careful with your passwords. Always have dual authentication or multi-factor authentication on all of your devices and core financial banking relationships. And lastly, freeze your credit. Make sure that you it's free. Go to Experian and TransUnion. If you have their app, there's a little slider in the app, and freeze it. And just make sure that you are protected in the best way possible from any theft from both a financial, cybersecurity, and your identity. And if you follow those rules, you'll be much better off for the time to come until there's such a level of breach. But when that happens, the responsibilities will ultimately be on the providers.
So Skynet has not taken over yet, so that is good to know, Ian. But you've given us some great advice that we should be following right now, and we should continue to follow, because AI is not going anywhere anytime soon, and it continues to get better, what it seems like, by the very minute. Ian Marlowe, founder and CEO of FiTech Consultants, thank you so much for giving us insight about this.
Have a great afternoon.
Oh, you too. Just about 3:45. We'll be right back here on Chicago Live. 3:47 is your time right here on Chicago Live. April 11th, 1952. There was a Pan Am flight that was going from Puerto Rico, and it was supposed to go to New York. Unfortunately, it crashed shortly after takeoff, and there were 64 passengers, five crew members aboard. Every single one of them ended up dying, and they initially, some of them were surviving after the first crash. Unfortunately, they did not make it. This was a plane that was lost for what many thought was forever until recently here. The wreckage of the Pan Am plane found 74 years later after it crashed in Puerto Rico. And there were so many things that we learned from this crash that ended up reforming safety on an airplane. And we still do to this day. So joining us right now to talk about what lessons were learned and about this crash altogether is Russ Matthews, who is the president of Air and Sea from the Heritage Foundation. Russ, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, when we were talking about the safety features of an airplane after a crash like this, it seemed like this crash right here from 1952, this Pan Am flight, really reformed how we look at safety on an airplane. And I was wondering, what's the first thing, if we were going on an airplane today, what we'd see where it was a direct result from reforms from that crash from 1952?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. One of the first recommendations that was made by the Civil Aeronautics Board, which was the forerunner to the FAA, was that in the future that passengers should be briefed on the location of where do you find your life jacket, where do you find your life vest, where are the life rafts, where are the exits, what do you do in the unlikely event of a water landing.
And because of all of that, when you're going through the passengers being briefed, and this is something that we go through every single flight. Most people, it seems like they are sleeping or they have their headphones on. These are all very, very important things because there is that offshoot chance that there could be an emergency and we have to go. And that's why people sitting on the exit row, hey, are you prepared to help everybody out if we need to go and evacuate the aircraft here, the life jackets, knowing where the exits are. Were all these things essentially what we found out from 1952 either not followed or not known, and could all those things have made a difference on this flight?
Well, it absolutely could have. I mean, the air travel at the time, was just reaching the general public. It had really expanded after World War II, and with all of the aircraft that had been built and the facilities that were constructed around the world to move these airplanes, to the fighting front, and so. When that ended, these aircraft were available surplus, and so the airlines acquired them and started bringing flying to the general public. This flight was, on Good Friday of 1952, headed for New York for the Easter holiday, and the $64 one way, San Juan to New York. So it was really again bringing flying to a public that was not used to that kind of travel, and so those procedures didn't really exist, and that was a hard lesson that was learned from this. I should correct that from the opening introduction that there were 69 people on board. All of them survived the initial water landing, but 52 were killed, and 17 actually did manage to survive and were rescued by the U.S. Coast Guard and Air Force.
That's right. I stand corrected on that. 17 survived right there. And this plane had been missing for such a long time, but was recently found. Was there a reason why it took this long for crews to end up finding that wrecked plane off the coast of Puerto Rico?
Yeah, well, we say it's missing. I mean, the wreck was unknown for that time. We had a general idea of where it came down. The issue was that in 1952, there was no technology that could reach down 2,000 feet below the surface and locate it. And as far as pinpointing the area where it happened, again, there was no radar tracks, there was no GPS. It was all based on essentially best guess of where this happened. And so it had to wait until the technology caught up for the ability to scan that kind of deep area and locate the wreck, which is what we started on in 2019 is when this came to my attention, and started gathering all the information that we could and pouring through the accident reports and the survivor statements and the witnesses and and getting a handle on where this all happened, and then gathering the tools that we needed to conduct the search.
When you were going through some of the safety features on an airplane of what ended up happening after that Pan Am flight from that Good Friday 1952, the passengers being briefed, the life jackets, knowing where the exits are, you didn't say anything about a black box. Was that something that came very much later because the technology had not been around? And it seems like even just adding that black box there, when finding out why a plane ended up crashing, it seemed like that made a difference too.
Yeah, the black box came much later. In this case, the safety features were essentially, they did have life jackets. Every one of the passengers had a life jacket, but they had no idea where to find it. And it turns out, one of the survivors, mentioned that she asked the steward where it was, and he says el bolsillo, which is in the pocket. And I think of that, and I think of the magazine pocket that you see on airplanes every day now. And actually, the life jackets on this plane were stored under a flap in the headrest of the seat in front of you. And I don't think in 2 minutes with the water flooding into the airplane that I would have ever thought to look there. So again, that was something that was not told to the people on board. All of the life rafts were stored together in one place, and the second officer managed to free one of them, but the frame that they were resting in was twisted and they couldn't free the others. He actually had to climb over the seats and duck through the emergency exit on the wing and swim underwater to get the life raft free of the airplane.
So it sounded like they had a lot of the great ideas. It was just impractical for where they were storing it, because you said they were all in one area, and you're thinking, the plane's going down, there's an emergency, you don't have time. You got to have it right there in your vicinity. That's why when you hear about a flotation device, it's pretty much right under your seat. You know exactly where it is.
Exactly. It's a hard lesson that was learned to, one, to distribute the life rafts throughout the plane, and also just to inform people, where their life jackets are and what they do. I mean, the survivors tell stories of the people just utter confusion and fear and just paralysis for a lot of them. We did actually manage to, in the last few weeks, we were contacted by the son of a passenger on the plane, and he told us, hey, my mom was on that plane and she's still alive at 102 if you want to talk to her, which obviously we did. We reached out and spoke to her, and it turned out, she was a nurse and was, trained in crisis, action. And so she got up out of her seat and found her way to the door, and she could read English. That was another problem too, is that a lot of the people there the majority of the people were from Puerto Rico and were Spanish speakers, but she was able to read the instructions and figure out how to get that door open and, lead some of the others out of the plane.
Russ, that is an unbelievable story. She's 102 years old now, and you can't plan for something like this. She was a nurse and just happened to be trained in a crisis like this, and this woman who was on the flight, you thinking she may have made a difference on something like this. And that's just the luck of the draw. Sometimes when there's a medical emergency, people yell, hey, is there a doctor in the house? You don't know that. She just happened to be there. And I wonder, hearing her story about how this really changed her life, and it changed the trajectory of so many other lives families who were on that flight.
Absolutely. We so admire her. She's someone who dedicated her whole life to helping others, and, really made a difference in that situation. And you could tell talking to her, she's a total firecracker, and that energy and that drive that drove her to survive, back then, has kept her going for 102 years, and she's still going strong.
And that's something like that, where it could be traumatizing, where somebody may not ever want to go on a plane, especially then. And you mentioned, Russ, that commercial air travel was still very much in its infancy, and something like this, I understand why some people would be afraid to travel right there. I was wondering if that woman had ever flown again, or if she was just completely traumatized by this and saying, nope, I don't want to do that ever again.
Right. No, she was living in New York at the time and had come back to visit family. So she traveled back and forth quite often, and was on another plane shortly thereafter, and went back to her life in New York. So I don't think she's letting anything stop her.
We learned so many lessons here when it comes to safety from this Pan Am flight from 1952, and there's been other unfortunate, tragic events that have shaped the way of how we look at safety and how we go to prepare for a potential emergency. As good as everything is today when it comes to safety, air travel, what we can do to be proactive, what do you think we still need to learn when it comes to keeping everybody absolutely safe on an aircraft?
I would say right now it's just pay attention at the beginning, to that briefing. I mean, I got to admit myself, I had fallen into the habit of just sort of tuning it out. But you need to know and you need to be prepared because you never know when it will make a difference.
And something like this, I'm wondering if there could be a bigger story to tell, because this is a fascinating story, because this was something that I was not familiar with about how this one plane crash changed the trajectory of how we go when we sit on an airplane, where things are strategically placed on an airplane, and more importantly, the announcement in the beginning of where the life jackets are, where the emergency exits are. Those are so important, and all those things are still today, how we get on a plane, it was all because of that one unfortunate plane crash.
Absolutely, yeah. It really felt like that legacy was in danger of being lost, to disappear along with the wreckage. And now that it's been found, it's brought it back into the public eye, and people are able to appreciate it and understand, the debt that we really owe. And it's been probably the most meaningful result of this is seeing the reaction coming out through social media and through our website, people reaching out that have connections, either they lost loved ones on that plane or they had people who were part of it, and it's been overwhelmingly positive and so humbling for us to hear them tell their story and understand how meaningful it is to those families that,
Live from Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at 4.
All right, got a lot to talk about on the News at 4, including why charges are being filed